Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of The Dating Game with myself, Troy Francis. Welcome to my channel. If you haven't subscribed already, please do so. Hit the subscriptions button, hit notifications, give me a like on the video. Please give me a like, everybody who's watching this. Really helpful. It's pushing up the algo. And if you are watching this on the replay, then thank you for joining. Thanks for watching. And please do also subscribe to the channel because tomorrow it's Valentine's Day and we've got lots of exciting content coming up on this channel to help you with your dating life. Because let's face it, the dating scene out there, it's pretty tortuous, let's say, for guys and for women as well. And so what we do on this channel is we try to decipher what's going on out there and find workable, actionable solutions to help you through. With all of that in mind, today what I want to do is talk about the issue of nice guys versus jerks. This is something that gets discussed ad infinitum in the manosphere, in the men's online space, and no surprises really, because as we know, the old adage goes, nice guys finish last. Women routinely will talk themselves about how they like the bad boys, or at least how they like the drama, okay? And in my view, this is rooted in women's desire to feel emotion in a relationship, okay? The most important thing, really, that you can do when you're on the date with her, when you're on from the first approach through to the date, through to the seduction, through to in the relationship itself, is to make her feel some kind of emotion. And often, even if that emotion is somewhat negative or it's somewhat negatively tinged, that's kind of better than nothing at all, than being bland, than being mediocre, and other things that go along with that, like being too submissive, too agreeable, okay? And ultimately, what does that all translate as? It translates as being too nice, okay? So this is something that's been discussed a lot, and one of the most famous people to write about this is Dr. Robert Glover, who wrote the book No More Mr. Nice Guy, which many of you will probably have already read. If you haven't, you absolutely should. You should certainly at least get it on Audible. It's a classic. It's something you really, really need to listen to understand about masculine frame versus feminine frame and how to hold that frame. And it's about 20 years old now, and it's become even more prevalent or even more important in modern society than perhaps it was before. And also as well, he's written a book called, there's a book he's got called Dating Essentials for Men, which is less well known, but really, really good, really interesting. And then there's another one, which is called Frequently Asked Questions about Dating Dating Essentials for Men. Slight little bit of a mouthful, but basically there's a frequently asked questions sort of add on to that book where he goes into reader questions and he talks through those, and that's really detailed and in depth as well. There's some really great material in there. Robert Glover has recently been on the interview circuit. He's done a couple of pretty high profile interviews in the last couple of weeks with Psychax and also with Chris Williamson. So what I wanted to do in this episode was just dive in, have a look at these interviews and see what he had to say. The reason he's doing these, I believe, is because he's got another book to promote, which I think is called The Big Stick. But we're gonna see it in this next interview. He's going to refer to it. Regardless, I'd highly recommend you get hold of at least No More Mr. Nice Guy, because it's really going to set the frame. Now more than ever before, you really need to be aware of this stuff. So we may as well hear it from the man himself. In the meantime, marriage causes divorce. Good to see you, bro. Thanks for tuning in as always. Nice guys finish first. Women want ruthless winners, absolutely. Any more comments, any more questions, put them into the chat, and we will go through them as we get into it. But anyway, let's have a look at this, and hopefully we'll be able to pick out some useful tips for you guys from this.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. I'm Dr. Orion Taraban, and I am very pleased to be able to sit down today with Dr. Robert Glover, the author of No More Mr. Nice Guy. I have my own copy right here.
Hey, man, that's a nice looking book you got there.
Yeah, man. Actually, this is one of the first books I read maybe 10 years ago when I started on my journey of self-awareness to level up in both my romantic and social life. So thank you for your work. It's meant a lot to me personally. I know it's helped a lot of guys all over the world. So I'm personally excited to have you on, and I think it's a great fit for the channel. So welcome.
Well, thanks for the invitation. It's good to be here, and let's have fun.
It's kind of ironic, isn't it, really? We've immediately got two of the most agreeable guys probably on the planet discussing how to be a bad boy, which is quite funny. But in all seriousness, I do think that Psychax, I think he's called Orion, is a really, really good guy. Really, really interesting content. His videos are fantastic, loads of great food for thought. And obviously, Robert Glover is the thought leader on this stuff. So let's get into what they have to say.
Let's do it. Now,
and this, by the way, is somewhat sped up. So if you think it's a bit too fast, put a note in the chat and I'll maybe slow it down. But I think because we obviously want to get through this material and see what they have to say. So
I assume that a lot of my audience is going to be familiar with your work, but just so that we get all of...
Sorry, Orion Taraban is this guy's name, Psychax. Great content creator. Really, really thoughtful, really in-depth stuff. As distinct from what you often get in some of the manosphere stuff. So his channel, really worth having a look at if you haven't already.
The same page. Tell me, what is a nice guy and what's so bad about it?
What's so bad about it? All right. A nice guy basically is a guy who doesn't believe he's just okay as he is. And this is an emotionally internalized belief, usually dating back to early childhood, where he believes he has to become what he thinks other people want him to be liked and loved and get his needs met, and hide anything about himself that might cause anybody to have a negative reaction.
I see. Okay, that's interesting because...
So that kind of encapsulates it, doesn't it? It's that fear of releasing anything about yourself that you think is going to put the other person off, okay? And these guys are largely looking at this through a dating context, but we are, as far as this channel is concerned, we're completely looking at this from a dating context. When you're on a date, it's basically like you don't reveal your authentic self to the woman that you're with because you're afraid that if you say something, it's going to put her off, she's going to reject you, you're never going to see her again. And there's multiple problems with that. One of them being that she's going to sense that you are operating from a place of scarcity. Because if you had abundance, if you were festooned with attractive women, then why would you be so bothered about saying something that might put her off potentially? Okay, you wouldn't be, because it wouldn't matter to you. So even just in itself, the very act of self-censoring is one that marks you down in her eyes as being lower value. Okay, but let's see what he goes on to say here. So but the point anyway, sorry, that he makes, that it's this notion of not being one's authentic self that is at the root of the nice guy thing. It's pretending to be something that we're not in order to gain the approval covertly of another person.
One of the episodes I made a while back is called Most Men Are Romantics. And I talk about how the most prevalent male romantic belief is I should be loved just for who I am. And that might sound like it runs a little counter to what you just described. And do you have a comment about that?
I could go a couple directions with that. I should be loved just as I am. Here's the deal. We'll start something off here. We can run with this a ways, I'm sure. I don't believe love's ever found externally. That's part of the problem. Is that we believe if I want to be loved, I got to go find it somewhere else. And you know, culturally.
So that's interesting. So Marriage Causes Divorce says, Orion recently done an interview on the Soft White Underbelly channel and got destroyed in the comments section. That's interesting. I wasn't aware of that. So why did he get destroyed? What were the main critiques of him? Was it that he was a bit too beta, or what were people saying?
You know, women are taught you go get it from a guy, and guys are taught you go get that from a woman. You know, and you know, unless we're not heterosexual, then just shift it to whatever our opposite sex is. But I think it is probably one of the greatest causes of human suffering that we go looking for love outside of ourselves. Because I don't know about you, in my experience, I've never been consistently loved by even the people who claim to love me. And you know, I can piss them off. They can fall out of love with me. And so, anytime we go searching for love outside ourselves, we're asking for a difficulty and problem. I think that's why so many relationships don't work. We go into them with this illusion, oh, this person likes me, wants to be with me. I finally found love. They're going to love me forever and everything's going to be great. Now, here's another problem. If we don't already internally feel particularly lovable, here's a couple of problems. We won't let anybody love us more than we already love ourselves.
You see, the only slight issue that I've got with Dr. Glover is that he, and perhaps, well, actually, less so Orion, I think Dr. Glover, is that he might at times veer slightly towards the blue pill side of things. He seems to be coming towards the kind of just love yourself before you can love another person kind of thing. And is there truth in that? I don't really know. I've never really understood entirely what that means. He's right in the sense that if you cannot be happy with yourself, then a relationship with another person is not going to fix that. He is absolutely right. I completely co-sign that. But the issue that people will have watching this is they'll say, if they haven't had success in dating, they'll say, well, okay, Dr. Glover, that's all very well for you to say with your Mexican wife and living in your nice house and selling your books and everything, but I can't even get a date here. And so, yes, there is this self-development side of things. There is this importance of, okay, I've got to build out myself before I worry about the externals. And you could say this relationship is external, but we are human beings. We're fucking human beings. We still crave love. We still crave affection. That appears to be becoming increasingly difficult for a larger and larger proportion of men out there. Okay, so I'm on the fence about it.
Whatever. If we put that on a scale of 1 to 10, I love myself a 6. Well, that's as much as we'll ever let anybody love us. It is 6 because we won't believe anybody could love us.
So marriage causes divorce is saying women thought he wasn't a gentleman. They said he was. Women were really upset with him. They were calling him a gold digger. Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, the interesting thing I think about Orion is that, and I've said this before on this channel, he's able to articulate some pretty brutal, what you might call red pill truths, without upsetting the horses too much. And obviously on that other channel he did. But in general, I think the reason why he hasn't been cancelled yet and probably is unlikely to be cancelled is because of the way he couches it. Okay, it's the medium is the message. He comes across as very inoffensive. He's an academic. He speaks in a very measured, calm way. He's not yelling at the camera, wearing a wife beater and calling people 304s. And so the message, even though the message might be broadly the same as some people who are like that, he articulates it very differently. And that I think works in his favor, which is, I think, quite cool. Orion, so marriage causes divorces. Orion was saying that men like physical intimacy and that women should consider giving higher value men physical intimacy and respect sooner rather than later. True. Yeah, I don't see any real problem with that, to be honest.
More than what we love ourselves. And most of us probably don't love ourselves at a 6. The second problem is we can't love anybody else more than we love ourselves. It's just impossible to be more loving to others than you are to you. Now, we may give more to other people. We may, create a codependent relationship.
Is that true? I never really understand that. He might be right. If somebody could explain in the comments why that's the case. Maybe he's going to explain. I never entirely understand why, even if you hate yourself, can you not love another person more than that? I don't know. Why would that not be the case?
With other people, but that's not love. That's borrowed functioning. That's giving to get. That's manipulation. That's I'll give to you so that you'll love me. So it's the covert contracts I talk about in No More Mr. Nice Guy. So I think that the issue that we got to start with is how do we learn to love ourselves and see ourselves as love? And if we don't believe we're lovable, we're not going to let people love us, and we're not going to let people see the real us, which that's actually how people kind of get a chance to love us, is they see the real us.
All right, so I suppose if we try and take this into more practical steps, okay, so you're walking into the bar, you're dealing with some women there, you're in the club, you're at the pool party in Miami, okay. If we start from the premise, women like bad boys, okay, what does all of this mean as far as that's concerned? Well, I think there is validity here, because what he's basically saying is you have to have love for yourself. We might say you have to have self-respect, okay? So what that might mean in a practical sense is if you feel that love for yourself, if you feel that self-respect, you think basically that you are worth it, you think that you are the shit, right? Then you can walk into that party, you can walk into that social space with a much more cocky demeanor, okay? You can walk into that social space even with a sense of maybe some arrogance about you, right? Because you already love yourself enough. If there's a gaping hole that's in the middle of your soul that you're carrying around and you think that you're shit and you don't regard yourself highly, it's going to be very, very hard to come across with that sort of panache, that kind of bad boy attitude. So I think that that's the way we connect these two things, if we want to sort of put this interview into more practical terms as far as real life dating is concerned.
And again, we won't love anybody more than we love ourselves. And the people around us will go, how come I don't feel all that loved by you? Well, we only love, I used to be religious. I have 2 degrees in religion. So without going down that road, it's interesting, we've all heard about kind of the golden rule and Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, where he said, love your neighbor as yourself. And we say that a lot, but I don't think we ever actually pull that apart and say, what is the standard of love for others? Your neighbor is referring to anybody out there. And when he said, love your neighbor as yourself, he said self-love is the standard of all love. And he just said that like everybody's going to understand that. It'll make sense. But here we're talking about, well, how do we get other people to love us? You don't. You love you. And my experience is the more you love you, the more you tend to attract people who act loving towards you.
Now, I can get behind everything that you just said. In fact, I made an episode a long time ago about the golden rule and suggested that another way to interpret that is less a commandment for moral action and more an observation on reality with an implied subject, as in love your neighbor as you love yourself could also be interpreted as you love your neighbor as you love yourself. That's just the reality of the situation.
And it could also be love yourself.
It could be. So I agree with all of that. I also had a mentor tell me once, and I think it's a good observation, is that you can't technically feel another person's love. You can only feel your own love coming out of you for others. And I think that might dovetail nicely with what you just.
Well, they're getting into a little bit of the old, like they've been on the old exotic cigarettes, isn't it? The late night, not quite Marlboro tobacco. It's like, man, yeah, you can never feel another person's love. You can only feel your love reflecting off their love. Yeah.
said. So I agree with everything you just said about love. I think that's wonderful.
Oh, come on. We're not going to have fun if you agree with
Well, I'm
everything.
not. So I'm going to push back a little bit more, which is,
but as I said on the comments, put any questions you got in the chat. Please do like the video as we go through this. Any comments, any observations you got about what they're saying. I mean, by the way, I'm broadly in agreement with all of these, what these guys are saying. I don't have any broad disagreement. I think it's a useful jumping off place where we can get into this topic of what a nice guy is and why it's a bad thing and how there's a better way of operating in the world. But at the same time, if there's anything you think they're saying that you disagree with, then put it in the chat.
let's go back to this idea that I should be loved just for who I am. What if you're unattractive to women just as you are?
You're going to be unattractive to some women just as you are. But it's also, what is your basis of attraction? One of the things I found, well, let me come at this with still two ways. One of the piece about this, looking for.
So I think that's an interesting point. Okay, so he makes the very good question. All right, love yourself, but what if you are unattractive to women as you are yourself? But there's so much nuance in that. Why are you unattractive to women? That would be an assumption on the part of the individual, wouldn't it? So the guy would say, all right, listen, I'm unattractive to women, therefore how can I love myself in this state? But has he spoken to every woman on the planet? I mean, there's what, 4 billion of them, right? He probably, or more, he probably hasn't really pushed himself. Has he really maxed out in terms of his self-development? We saw some videos last week where we were watching guys who didn't have girlfriends or had never had a girlfriend at the age of like 25 and then 35 and then 45, whatever it was. And I made the comment in each of those cases, it wasn't that the guy was necessarily horrendously ugly or was somehow unfit for human affection or anything like that. A lot of the times it was personality traits or social things that they could work on and they could improve upon. So in the instance of somebody saying, all right, well, I'm unlovable, so how can I love myself? That would be the wrong way of going about it. What the person should always have baseline love for themselves, regardless of how society takes them on. And this is exactly what happened for me, okay? Because what happened for me was, I was pretty much an incel when I was at school. There was no action happening, really. I would always fancy the hottest girl in the class, and she wouldn't reciprocate. And even if there were other people interested in me, I'd disregard those because I wanted that particular girl, the princess, the queen, the one-iters. And as a consequence of that, my dating life was tumbleweeds, or really until I turned 20. And then things changed for me, okay? And what changed for me was basically I started partying a lot. I started to drink a lot. I started to do various different like naughty substances and things like that. My confidence, I suppose you could say, my sense of self-worth was artificially blown up. Now, I'm not recommending this for anybody out there. I don't think this is the right way to do it. But a consequence was my self-esteem was artificially blown up. And so people then started responding to me differently. I started to develop, I started to get attraction from women, and I, fall into relationships with some of those women, and it all went on from there. Okay, so if I'd have, I developed self-love, I guess, by accident in a way. But it was also partly a deliberate thought experiment as well. I also went out there and I said, you know what? Sod this. I'm going to now stop being, for a period of time, that self-deprecating guy who doesn't think he's shit and thinks everybody else is better than him. Just as a thought experiment, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to flip it on its head, and I'm going to go around and I'm going to act as if I think I'm better than everybody else. Now, this was stimulated. This was, elevated by the fact that I was partying and, having a drink and all of those kinds of things. But what then happened was I was getting this positive feedback loop where people were responding, particularly women were responding positively to that. It was building it up, and then it was this virtuous circle. Okay. So everybody, regardless of, even if he thinks that he is unlovable, he is somebody who women just don't like as he is. Firstly, you've got to interrogate, well, why is that accurate? Because a lot of people, they have almost body dysmorphia. They don't have the correct assessment of that situation anyway. Secondly, what could he be doing to change that around? And thirdly, even if he was unlovable, sod it, he should still absolutely think that he is the shit anyway, because that's the only way to proceed through the world, right? You've got to go through backing yourself. If you don't back yourself, nobody else is going to buy into what you have to sell. SJ says, Troy Francis, nice haircut, man. Thank you very much, bro. Right, let's anyway continue.
Love outside of ourselves. One of my certified coaches wrote a book recently called Sipping Fear, Pissing Confidence. And it's written, it's a great book, amazing book, written from a point of dealing with addiction for men. But he covers a lot of stuff. But there's a line in there when I was listening to the audiobook. He said, a man doesn't mature until he quits seeking the love of a woman. And that hit me is so true, because what are we out there trying to find a substitute mommy to come love us because we don't love ourselves all that much? Yeah. And I thought that really is true. As long as we're seeking love from a woman as a guy, we're in an immature state. You know, it's love me, think I'm good looking enough to be attracted to, you know, love me enough to want to have sex with me. And all of that is putting all of our internal power in the hands of somebody else. Okay, so there's one piece of it. But let's bring it back to that whole attractiveness. What if I'm not attractive enough to attract women? Most men get it wrong, what's attractive to women. Now, you know, I don't know. I'm sure studies have been done on attractiveness. I don't know how to even define, you know, what defines what you're attracted to in another person.
Yeah, so he's right about that. I think most men don't know what it is to be attractive to a woman. And what most men think it is the 3 6s, you know, 6 foot tall, 6 figures, 6-pack abs, whatever, right? And superficially, those things, of course, are attractive. But he's pointing at a deeper truth here, which is that a girl can get with a guy who has all of those things, but there's still something missing, because what is actually at the root of attraction and what's actually at the root of interpersonal relationships is something much more than that. It is this, it's this chemistry between the two people, okay? And it's your job. The guy with Riz, for example, is the guy who is able to create that that chemistry between him and the woman more often than not. Nobody can do it every time. Nobody can do it with every single woman. But the whole point of game is the ability, in more cases than not, or certainly with women who are open to you, to be able to create that charisma, that sense of excitement, that sense of, you want to give her the butterflies, basically. All right. If you're doing that, great. If you're not doing that, even if you do have the 666, whatever, which most guys think is all you need, then you're not going to get very far. Or at least you're probably not going to retain her. Okay.
Might be some physical traits. It might be some emotional traits. It might be some energetic traits. It might be personality. It might be behaviors. It might be all of the above. It might be based on your relationship with your mother and your third grade girlfriend. I don't know. I honestly do not know how to figure out why I'm attracted to what I'm attracted to. Now, I do know I'm highly attracted to unhappily married women. I do know that. You know, that has nothing to do with their physical features. I just know that my first love object was an unhappily married woman. And, you know, I'm highly drawn to, I can fix that. I can fix that. I can make that better. So I've learned to watch that one. Right? I've learned to pay attention to it. But like, my wife will accuse me, you were looking at that woman. What kind of woman are you attracted to? Are you attracted to this or that?
I mean, I think that the only problem with this line of argument is that it's slightly different for men and women, isn't it? So he's sort of saying, well, he's asking Orion, well, what are you attracted to? You know, you're probably attracted to all different kinds of women. Well, I think men have a much broader net that they'll cast out into the dating pool, won't they? She's like, yeah, she's kind of cute. She's kind of, yeah, she's nice. She's okay. Whereas women, it's very, very narrow, because it only encompasses the top 20% of guys or whatever it is. So I'm not sure the argument. I do agree with him that yes, attractiveness is in the eye of the beholder, and obviously we can't overgeneralize, because in reality, that you will get beautiful girls going out with guys who you might consider not ugly, or you get, I don't know, there's all kinds of weird discrepancies that do happen in real life in the dating market. But obviously, to assess it in any kind of meaningful way on these shows, on these podcasts, we have to look at it. We have to look at the overarching, the general themes. The general consensus is what men will cast their net a lot wider, okay? Because men are more horny and they're more thirsty, and they don't have as many opportunities. Women will tend to sort of narrow it down, and there'll be certain guys that are just completely off the table for them, because they don't meet some of their, you know, they don't tick the boxes exactly, if that makes sense. So I think women have a much lower tolerance level, I would say, than guys do.
Women always ask guys, what kind of women are you attracted to? And I'll go, I guess ones that treat me nice. But, you know, it's not like, oh, I'm attracted to blondes or tall or short or curly hair. I think that's just too simplistic. And when men start trying to figure out what women are attracted to drug dealers, to men in prison, to short guys, to porn stars, to, you know, pro athletes, to, you know, saints, you know, I don't know. So whatever a man thinks is what makes a woman attracted to a man, he's almost always going to be wrong. Because I always thought, well, if I didn't like have the nice square jaw, full head of hair, if I didn't have the proverbial alpha, you know, look to me, I thought I would not be physically attracted to women. And then when women started telling me, oh, you have kind eyes. Oh, I love your kissable lips. Oh, I love your hands. I mean, what the fuck? What is it about my hands that some woman would find attractive? But women have told me that. Now, was it probably more than my hands? Was it probably more than my kind eyes? Was it, I don't know. Now, I have some theories that in general, what women in general find attractive. But again, if a man tries to figure out, well, if I just be this, do that, that'll make women attract me. Well, I'm being that, doing that, and they don't seem to be attracted to me. Therefore, I must not be attractive. Mm-hmm. Again, that's basing, you know, okay, women in general, want to have sex with me or don't want to have sex with me, that's going to determine my worth, my value, my attractiveness. Again, that's a real fragile measuring stick of our worth.
Well, I think what is a fragile measuring stick is to assume that it is all the externals that everybody talks about. So people think basically, right, what is it? It's you've got to be good looking, conventionally good looking. You've got to be tall. You've got to be a certain way physically. That is, you've got to be muscular. You've got to be rich. Okay, those I think are the four main building blocks, right? And guys think, okay, if I tick off those to the best of my ability, then I should get a hot girlfriend, or I should get the interest of multiple women. And it's not that simple, okay? So you could be a guy who's in good shape. You could be a guy who's decent looking. You could be a guy who goes to the gym and maybe does some kind of martial arts or whatever. You could have a nice car and a nice watch. And you could still be left on the shelf as far as dating is concerned, all right? So you're ticking off the boxes that society and dating advice, most dating advice channels will tell you this is what you should get, this is what you should do, and you're still getting no action. Why is that? Well, it's because you don't have the rears, you don't have the edge, you don't have the X factor, okay? You are not able to create chemistry with her. So yes, you've got these external things, and yes, she might find those appealing, but there's a difference between appealing and her turning into the Niagara Falls downstairs for you, okay? So what is actually arousing, and what, as he's saying, is arousing is something different, okay? And that's why the penniless drug dealer or the dude who's smoking crack in the back of the Perkins or whatever those restaurants are called, or it's why those idiosyncratic characters can often end up being successful, where the more on paper successful dude isn't, okay? And the big failing that men have is not understanding female psychology, which is the desire for drama and the desire for emotion. So that's where I think he's correct. However, people are taking issue here. So marriage causes divorce, saying short guys, come on, that's a stretch. Women who love short bald guys have bills that need to be paid. I think I take your point. I think the height thing is overplayed, actually, in this space. I'm not sure that to say women love short guys is completely accurate, but I think the height thing is somewhat overplayed, because there's plenty of tall guys who are dorky who aren't getting any action either, you know? So bear that in mind. And I know that because obviously we coach a lot of these people.
Lovability.
Okay, I buy all of that, and I have a whole chapter about this in my upcoming book on sexual marketplace value. And I do think that
I love that chapter. That's a great chapter title.
I do think that we culturally have, let's say, archetypes for male and female beauty, and that the more a man or a woman accords with those biologically informed and culturally influenced standards, the higher a person's attractiveness is. But absolutely, no man is attractive to all women. No woman is attractive to all men. And ultimately, what it comes down to is perceived sexual.
So, but the problem is, there's the idea, and this is the black pill narrative, that it's only about looks. And if you're good looking by those social standards, then you're not going to have any problems. And if you're not good looking by those social standards, you're not getting any action. And that is a lie. That's not borne out in reality. All you have to do is walk out of the house and you'll see that that's not the reality. And it's also not borne out even from the guys who are meant to be the winners in that scenario, because the reason that we will get clients who will come to us who are good looking and sometimes have money and they're sometimes socially in a good place, and they're still not getting dating success. If it was the simple equation, good looks equals getting lots of poom, these guys would never come to us, but they do, all right? And that's why I keep banging on this channel about the fact that there needs to be something else. And what the need is to understand female psychology and be able to activate attraction triggers within her, okay? Create chemistry when you're with her, right? The other stuff, great. Yes, you need the other stuff, or at least you need some of the other stuff. And you should be working on getting the other stuff anyway. You should be looks maxing, right? You should be making yourself look as good as possible. You should be dressing as well as possible, grooming yourself as well as possible. You should be looking at your career, making some cash, having an interesting life, working out at the gym, doing a combat sport maybe. All of these different things, they're great, and they definitely add to the overall appeal. But if you're not also creating that one-on-one connection with her when you're with her, then that's going to be a problem in the end.
Marketplace value, because even though all other things being equal, this person might be more attractive to more people if his, let's say, normalized sexual marketplace value is higher. It all comes down to the point of transaction with that person that you're dealing with. And people very wildly with respect to their tastes in partners and in the bedroom.
Yeah, exactly. That point of transaction, he calls it. That I would agree with.
Attraction. Oh, yes. So about what you said, as long as men are trying to become attractive in order to get women, in order to get laid, they've already kind of lost because they've given their power away. I can agree with that, but I think that's a tough sell. I think men kind of have to be catfished into self-development. I think in the beginning it has to be because it's the strongest motivation in the world for a guy is to want to get laid. And only as he starts to level up and maybe take care of his lifestyle and his fashion and his wealth and his game does he realize, oh, this is inherently rewarding and this is good for me. But I don't think he gets there first.
I'm laughing because I do agree with that in general. That I've written a couple of books, one Dating Essentials for Men, the other one Dating Essentials for Men, Frequently Asked Questions. And
you should get those books because they're very, very good. I mean, look, he's an older guy. I can't speak for the kind of the quality of the ladies he's dating or anything like that, but he does have some very good advice. One of the best pieces of advice that he has in Dating Essentials for Men is basically go out, be super social, talk to as many women as you can, and look for signs of availability and high interest. Okay, those women who are both have high interest in you and they're available, those are the ones where it might proceed, you might be able to make something happen. If the woman has low interest in you, she's just like, yeah, okay, well, thank you very much, yeah, I got a boyfriend, fine, just disregard, move on. Or if she's got interest in you but she's also not available because she's married or she's in a serious relationship or whatever it is, again, disregard and move on. So the idea is be in contact with, socialize with as many people as possible, including women you're attracted to. Of those, look for those signs, test for signs of high interest and availability, and then from those, get contact details, arrange dates, and take it further. It really, really simplifies the whole process, okay? That's what I really like about that book. And there's obviously a lot more detail to it, there's a lot more meat on the bone, but that's why you should get Dating Essentials for Men. And then the second book he mentions, the Frequently Asked Questions one, is also very good. He clarifies some of the concepts. Some of the things he says I don't entirely agree with, but I think that central idea of just simplifying this whole damn thing really, really helps and is very useful.
In the book, I say this book is a dating book. I'm calling it a dating book because you want to learn how to date and you want to get laid. The truth is, it's how to expand your social and emotional intelligence book. That's really what it's going to teach you. The motivation is you want to attract women and you want to have a girlfriend, and you want to get laid. But I'm going to teach you how to do some things.
So there's a couple of comments here. So Kian Hui says, I keep hearing all the whats, but nobody on the dating coaching scene can tell you the hows. So in the end, most guys still have to figure it out themselves. Well, no, we've got a whole course. We're running a course called The Edge. It's still open until tomorrow at midnight, which tells you all of the hows. The hows are all available to you, okay? It's firstly getting yourself into the best possible position as far as all the fundamentals are concerned, and then it's understanding female psychology, and then it's going out there into the world and applying that and doing the work, that is to say approaching and being social. It's a learnable, repeatable, reliable system that absolutely works. Okay, this stuff can be learned. There is a solution. You don't have to go and figure it out for yourself. It's been done for you. Okay, between us we've worked with thousands of clients all over the world, and our system has worked. Okay, so no, it's not about just blindly going out for yourself and trying to figure it out. The answers to this are very, very clear. They're well documented. They're tried and true and tested, and there's no problem on that side of things at all. However, a lot of people who are new to coming to this, it's interesting to delve into the conversation and sort of interrogate these aspects. The nice guy thing. To create some content, to create some conversation. But if you're looking for hows, we've got the hows. The problem is solved. We have the keys to the kingdom, so don't worry about that. Marriage causes divorces. Black pill is correct. If you're genetically ugly and genetically on the spectrum, it's over for you. Yeah, but how ugly are we talking? Because I looked at like 4 videos last week of dudes who would probably describe themselves as fitting into that category, and they don't. They're not that bad looking. So yeah, I mean, I would agree if somebody is very, very unfortunate and aesthetically they are in a very, very bad situation, then yeah, it's going to be difficult for them, although there are counterexamples to that too, of course. But the percentage of the population that is extremely small. Most of these guys who are claiming to be, black pill are actually pretty average looking dudes who just don't want to go out there and do the work. That's the fucking reality of it. The spectrum, being on the spectrum, yeah, that makes things harder. But again, it is possible to work through that to some extent. I know people who've had success with that. I've had some success even with that myself. So I kind of agree, but it's all a matter of degrees. And actually, most of these black pill guys are charlatans because they're not actually as ugly as they're claiming to be. In fact, I've had black pill guys say that I'm uglier than some of the key leading figures in the black pill space. And it's like, well, I've dated loads, so what's their excuse? It doesn't, like, none of it really makes any sense. Unless you happen to be Quasimodo, but very few people out there pretending to be black pill are. If a woman says to you, your hands are sexy, that means the rest of you sucks. Yeah. Everett says, good to see you together. Once again, Troy, miss you and Pearl and you together. Yeah, she came on the other day. We did a show about the... we did a show about the Christ pill. Bruce C says, I don't want to buy your course, spelled incorrectly. Thank you. No, thank you. Well, thank you for taking the few moments out of your valuable, very, very short life and existence on this planet to write that pointless comment to me, sir. Thank you for that. If you're ugly, blame your parents. All right. Yo Kwan says, where can I see the link of The Edge? If you just drop me an email, troy@realtroyfrancis.com, and I can get you all the details. It's troy@realtroyfrancis.com. Or you can get on my email list. There's a link in the description below somewhere as well. Or just follow me on Twitter @realtroyfrancis, and you'll see the details there. But drop me a link or drop me an email or a DM, and I can explain there. Okay, let's see. Anyway.
That are going to increase the odds of doing that. And it really is by teaching men how to expand their social and emotional intelligence that I believe makes them more generally attractive. I'll give you just a couple.
Yeah, social emotional intelligence. He's absolutely right there, and that is actually one of the elements of Edge. So the elements of Edge that we talk about are elite hormone optimization, which is getting your hormones on point because a lot of guys don't have that together. Dangerous man formula or the dark triad. Okay, that's the D because we need a little bit of that bad boy energy. Godlike sexual magnetism, which is becoming comfortable with your sexuality and expressing that, because that's where a lot of guys also fall down. And then emotional and social intelligence. All right, that's the final E. If you've got all of those four components in place, and that's what we teach on that course, then that is the keys to the kingdom, really. As well as, and by the way, the final E, emotional and social intelligence mastery, that incorporates what you would call game. So that incorporates the tactics and the things to say and all the rest of it. But when you've got all of those four things together, that's when you become an unstoppable force of nature as far as dating is concerned. Most guys don't. Most guys don't have even one of those things, let alone all four of them. Okay, so that is the reason why most guys are failing, and it is something you can work on. It's not an overnight, silver bullet that's gonna in 13 days or less you're going to have a supermodel girlfriend. It doesn't work like that. But those are the things that you need to focus on if you're really serious about changing this area of your life.
Thoughts, kind of a foundation for how I tend to approach it. I'll give you one example. I just started reading a book last night. I got in bed, got my Kindle out, and I thought, all right, I'm tired of reading self-improvement books, business books, marketing books. So I pulled up a fiction book that I had just on a whim downloaded a month or so ago. I think it's called The Little Liar by Mitch Albom, and it's written during Nazi World War II. And the book kind of starts out with some people on a Nazi train being taken to a death camp. And then it segues into a commentator in the book is Truth. And Truth is talking to us. And Truth is the personification of truth. And Truth even says that anybody who is truthful is immediately more attractive. I'm not quoting it.
Please give me a like if you haven't done so already. By the way, we've got 36 people in here. We've had over 40 people in here today. So we want over 40 likes on this video, please, at least. Any comments you've got, any questions, please put them into the chat and we'll deal with them.
Exactly. But he gave a reference to this very physically attractive young boy, but because he was truthful, everybody was attracted to him. And he said very few people are actually truthful. So I could take that I think there are energetic and emotional dynamics that create far more powerful attraction than the shape of your nose, size of your jaw, the Venus of your body, your perceived market value. Do those things help? Yeah, they help in terms of triggering a chemical reaction in a woman's brain that evolution put in there. That guy's fit, he's strong, he can take care of me. Of course, that stuff is there. It doesn't hurt. But what is it about those people that don't have those features, but yet even as men we're drawn to them?
Yeah, so he's right. So there is something else, okay, and this is where I think the black pill narrative falls down because it doesn't take into account, and this is why I keep banging on about how we will get good-looking clients who can go on dates and the girl at the end is like, yeah, thanks, but no thanks, or he tries to go in for the kiss and she turns the cheek, or she doesn't return his text. And then you can get less good-looking guys who are getting mad results, okay? Why is that? Why would that be the case? Well, it's because of what he's talking about, which is, and I think Orion referred to it before, which is what happens at the point of transaction, okay? When you're sitting in front of the woman, what is the chemistry that's passed between the two of you? A lot of guys who come to us to be quite frank, are not able to generate the kind of chemistry that is required to make a woman fall in love, to make a woman attracted to him on a deeper level. They just can't do it, all right? And what that means is their dates are very flat, their dates are very boring, the woman is not turned on, even if she's interested because he's got a nice house or he's got a big car or whatever. That won't necessarily translate into anything sexual happening because she's not feeling the emotion. Now, are there situations where there are gold diggers, or there are women who will compromise that part because they want the other thing? Well, yes, of course, but I would say that is suboptimal for the guy involved as well as for the woman. So what we're looking for here really is to generate the right kind of desire in her from the beginning, okay? And then, yes, as he says, the other thing's also important. Work on those things too. But the key thing that you need is this somewhat inexpressible piece, which is the chemistry that you guys create between the two of you at the point of transaction.
Like their energy. We like how we feel around them. We like listening to them. We feel comfortable engaging with them. What are those features? And those features work with women. And, you know, one of the things I say, whenever I say this to like a woman coach, like if I'm being interviewed by a woman, and I say, you know, I found that the feminine, I'll speak of the feminine as an energetic state. So whether it's women, you know, dogs, cats, babies, adventure, money, opportunity, the feminine is highly attracted. We just lost something.
We did? What happened?
Oh, on my end, my screen went, all right, must have been a Zoom thing or a screen.
Looks like we're still recording.
We're good.
Okay.
We're good. I'll back up.
Feminine.
Take a breath, the feminine. So I say the feminine is highly attractive. Now, feminine, I mean, women, dogs, cats, babies, money, adventure, opportunity is highly attractive to a man who is comfortable in his own skin, knows where he's going, and he looks like he's having a good time going there. I'll say that to women coaches, and, you know, I got to chuckle at you, and the women go, they sigh. Yeah. And because, you know, they're used to, you know, working with men. Usually these women coaches are usually coaching men. And the men come in because they watch enough shit on the internet from all the pickup guys and all the dating gurus that basically says you need this line, you need these physical features, you need this alpha behavior, you need this thing, you need that thing. And all these guys, none of them actually get comfortable in their own skin. Kind of going back to that self-love thing. You know, I like me. I like my life. I like how I live it. I'm comfortable living it on my terms. You know, using a psychological term, I'm differentiated. You know, I show up, live my life. I'm internal locus of control, another psychological term. That in general is highly attractive to outsiders, men and women. And I think if men can go to work on those pieces and quit worrying about judging themselves of do they have six-pack abs? Do they have enough hair? Are they young enough? Do they have, you know, the V features of the body? I think when a guy quits worrying about that shit and goes about living his life on his terms, all of a sudden he notices all these really good things start coming to me. I don't have to make it happen.
I agree with all that at the end, but I don't know if I can sign off on people find the truth attractive. I think if people really found the truth attractive, the world would look very different than it does today.
Well, I agree with that, but tell you what, test this. Go out in public and watch a couple that's obviously been together for a while in public, husband and wife. And the ones who look the most bored, the most distracted, the most on their phones, the most disinterested, I promise you, that's a couple that quit telling each other the truth a long time ago.
I have an episode coming out on this next week.
The truth is never boring.
It's never boring.
The truth is
That's
never
right.
boring. And I tell you what, women are not attracted to boring men. And as soon as a man starts repressing his truth, who am I? What do I think? What do I feel? What do I want? Where am I going? And trying to do whatever it is he thinks is going to attract a woman, he's repressed his own inner truth. And now all of a sudden he's going to be inherently boring. So again,
yeah, so there is something in this, I think, and I feel half naked. This old man knows how to pick up girls. Where are his receipts? Do you mean me, or do you mean Orion, or I take you mean Dr. Robert Glover? But he's right about this, isn't he? He's right about this, which is that women are not attracted to boring men. Okay, so what he's proposing here is that truth is the thing that makes you be not boring. I would maybe modify the term truth a bit and say authenticity. Okay, now again, then you get into the conundrum of people will say, yeah, but just that you're just saying just be yourself, dude. Well, yes, but you've got to kind of be your unfiltered self, all right? And what is yourself? Well, as a guy, what yourself might be, or probably is, if we're honest, is I am a man of lust and I have animal desire and I want to go out there and conquer the world. And sometimes I'll do things that maybe are not the nicest thing because I want to get my own way. I am passionate. I am sexually attracted to women. I want to do this. I want to do that. Okay. Now, that might be the real authentic self. And then, but often in a polite society kind of date situation, guys will repress that stuff. Okay. So they're being themselves, but the themselves they're being is the socially acceptable, refined version, the PG friendly version of themselves. And what I think he's saying here, Robert Glover, is fundamentally you've got to drop all of that shit and you've just got to be your raw, unfiltered self. And this is something actually that we've started to talk about. We've started to talk about it in the context actually of hormone optimization, because if you imagine being the ultimate high T guy, okay, your testosterone is firing, it's like bang, 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 like that. You're not going to be walking on eggshells with a woman or with anybody else, are you, about the reality of your nature? Okay, you're not going to be walking on those eggshells. You're just going to be very direct. It's going to be this is how it is. My way or the highway. Take it or leave it. Okay, and that I think is what he's talking about when he's talking about truth. Yeah, Robert Greene. It's not Robert Greene. It's Robert Glover. I feel half naked, but I take your point.
Does truth make people inherently attractive? How about, that's just a quote from the book, but is more along the lines of I think our energetic states that make us the most attractive. So if
yes, hallelujah, our energetic states make us the most attractive. That is the key thing. That is very, very important what he said there. In fact, I might even make a note of it and tweet it. Are energetic, and I find myself talking about this shit a lot, and you think, oh Jesus, this sounds woo-woo, this sounds like hippie-ish, is anybody fucking following this? Does this make any sense? But he's absolutely right. It is our energetic states, and the energetic state that we create when we are with the woman that is going to make her attracted or not. It's basically like when she sits down with you on the date, is she thinking, yeah, I kind of want to fuck him. I want him to take me to the toilet, so I want to get naughty with him in the restroom. Or is she thinking, yeah, nice meal. This is a little bit boring. I wonder if we can get home so I can watch Grey's Anatomy before I go to bed. Right? It's like, which one of the two states are you triggering? And if you're triggering the second state, you're not in a good space, regardless of even if you're a supermodel and you've got a Bugatti outside or whatever. Let's carry on.
Do not withhold your truth. Because, like, for example, in dating essentials for men, and when I talk with guys, I'll say, listen, the thing that will make you most interesting and attractive to women is be yourself. And guys go, well, that doesn't seem to be working out so well so far. Being who I am doesn't seem to be turning very many women on. And I'll go, how many people do you even let you see the real you? How many people know how much you look at pornography? How many people know, how much you dislike yourself or how insecure you are? Or how many people do you let actually see those things about you? And the truth is, nobody. We don't let anybody see that shit. And what I found for me, when I started dating in my late 40s and early 50s, I had what I considered unprecedented success. Women were coming on to me. They're getting naked on first dates. They were propositioning me. Majority of them were significantly younger than me. And I wasn't trying. I wasn't chasing them. Since my second marriage, I've never tried to get a woman to have sex. And I never had a shortage of sex. And I thought, what planet have I landed on? I wasn't getting better looking. I didn't have more money. I filed bankruptcy after my second marriage. So I was broke. But the thing that I think turned women on, and men as well, was I was authentic. I was real. I didn't hold anything back. I was playful. I was fun. I didn't give a shit. And
exactly right. And that's another key thing. Not giving a shit. Super, super important. Outcome independence. Okay. So yes, on the one hand, you want to get laid, you want to have a girlfriend, you want to maybe get married, whatever it is that you want. Yes, that's the meta level. But on the micro level, you don't give a shit. It's this particular situation, this particular scenario, this particular woman. You're just going to have fun. You're going to be you. But you're unfiltered you, and he's right. He makes that distinction, doesn't he? It's like it's not just I'm being myself, but I'm talking about my job as a realtor in Orlando, and she's looking at her phone for the whole day. It's not that kind of being yourself. It's being the raw, unfiltered version of yourself, and most people are not that, and that's why most people are not able to create that energetic state between the two of you where it's like, shit, something fucking important passed between the two of us. There was something there that was like, and then that's when she becomes magnetically attracted to you, or the opposite. Or she's like, fuck this guy. I don't want to have anything to do with this guy. And that's fine too. But it's better to create polarity, right, than it is to be this beige, boring sort of dude that she overlooks.
So I took a risk, and I can be vulnerable. That seemed to be really attractive to people. And all of a sudden, I'm going, man, I'm getting a lot of dates. Guys are saying, tell us what to do. I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm just kind of being out there, being myself.
I think the indifference is key, Robert, because the vulnerability is often a double-edged sword. I was told that women wanted men who were vulnerable and emotionally intelligent and whatnot. And in my teens and early 20s, I often would share a lot of my deep, dark insecurities. And let me tell you, did not have the intended effect. But maybe that is because I was still doing so out of a covert contract, in the sense of like, if I do this, then I will be rewarded with sex and a relationship. And that's certainly not true.
And because you were still doing what you thought was going to make women attracted to you.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? You were still following a scheme because someone told you, oh, this will make you attracted to women. Oh, I will do more of that. And all you found out is that, women.
I think it also depends on how you relay the information as well. I don't think it's being a crybaby who's just sort of saying, oh my God, I'm so insecure about how I look, and you're looking kind of weak. I think that, and maybe this is playing the game slightly, but it's where you want to be kind of selective about the information that you reveal at the time that you reveal that information in the relationship with her, and the way you frame it as well. So, for example, if you've had a problem with addiction, that's a good story to tell, because then you might then be able to tell the story of how you overcame that, right? And how you've had the strength to survive in the world, having come through what was traumatic or what was difficult in your past. If you're framing it as, oh, woe is me and this terrible thing happened and you know, you're bursting into floods of tears, that is going to probably be less attractive. So when we're talking about being your authentic self, yes, absolutely, but equally, you can also think about the presentation of that. I don't think there's a contradiction there. I think those two things can coexist. Eric Linden says, what's your longest relationship you've had? Well, technically 4 years, but there's also a woman that I've known now for over 6 years, and so, you know, that would clarify as well. That would qualify as well, I guess. So, which, you know, it's decent amounts of time. I mean, I've also been somebody who's never really, to this point, you know, looked to really consolidate on a longer term thing. It's got to be with the right person, okay? And if you find that right person, then yes, that will be something I 100% will do. But, you know, it's not been the sort of, it's not the only measure on which to qualify success, I would say, as far as the dating game is concerned. But, you know, it's like, yeah, man, I mean, that's where I'm at. I don't know. What about you?
Kind of saw you as needy and insecure.
Yeah.
Now,
That's pretty much what
vulnerability doesn't mean you turn every woman into your therapist, your emotional tampon. I mean, that's not what we're talking about. I'll give you an example, a today example. You mentioned you're getting over a flu, a cold. And I mentioned, yeah, this week I had something just knocked me out. I don't know what, felt like allergies, but I just slept all last Monday. And today's Thursday, so I'm kind of getting back at it. I usually am up early, but I slept in, so I didn't get up with my wife and take the dog walking. So this morning we're walking the dog. And I just shared with my wife, and she's not who I go to for my emotional work. I have plenty of guy friends in my life that I do that emotional work with. But she does need to know in general what's up with me. You know, I don't withhold that from her. But so we're walking the dog, and I said, I think I'm a little depressed. I said, I've just felt no energy, no ganas, which is in Spanish. My wife's Mexican. No ganas, no drive. And she kind of got quiet. I thought, you know, that's when they'd say, oh, don't be that vulnerable. The woman will feel unsafe and unprotected. And I even thought, you know, that could make her feel a little bit, oh no, you know, because, you know, she's a tough woman. She grew up 8 out of 10 kids, poverty, Guadalajara, Mexico. She's been beat on by everybody in her life, family, neighbors, and she's tough. I mean, she goes to the gym 2 hours a day. She's on Muay Thai. She's done kickboxing. I don't pick fights with her. But you know, a couple of times when I've had some serious illness and even close to death a few years ago, I could tell it just devastated her, just because, like, oh no, you know, he's going away. So I mentioned this morning, I think I'm a little depressed. That's all I said. Didn't go into details. Still had a lot of energy. And I even thought that's probably about as much information as I need to give her. We get back, and I had a call. I got off the call this morning, and there was 2 plates of fruit sitting out on the bar. And she was all dressed up. She was going out to have breakfast with her girlfriends. There's a plate of fresh cut pineapple, and a plate of fresh cut papaya. And she goes, I did this for you. And I said, thank you. I love it. That's great. I'm so appreciative. And she says, you know, I'm always thinking about you. And I go, I know that. I know how much you love me. She goes, and I'm all dressed up because, you know, I always want to look good for you. And I said, yeah, I know that. I appreciate that. And so she went out, and then I texted her after my phone call. I said, I'm gonna hit the gym. We have a gym in the house. So I got my video on, did my workout because I haven't felt well. I haven't worked out for about a week and a half. And she always kind of gets on my case if I don't work out much. So she comes back, and I said, got my workout in. I said, yeah, I think I'm feeling a little better. She goes, because you got in the gym? I said, no, because you made me fruit. And, you know, I kind of put it back, you know, thank you for loving on me. So the point is, yeah, a woman does want to know, I'm struggling a little bit with this. Do they want us to sit and just kind of, you know, give them the whole story? No, they really don't. Again, where do you find that tipping point? You can usually watch it in their body language when you've gone too far with it. They actually kind of get bored and want to withdraw. So I tell guys, have good guy friends. Have good men in your life. And I do. When I'm struggling, there's other men. In fact, I told my best friend last night in a voice message. He said, I'm kind of coming out of my months-long funk. And I go, I had a week-long funk. And I said, I think I'm starting to come out of it. I tell other people, other guys about that. And then I can just give my wife kind of the guy version of it.
Yeah, that sounds right to me. I made an episode a long time ago called The Captain Can't Complain. So if you're leading the relationship and you're, you know, imagine you're the captain of the ship and you're heading into a storm. If you bring the whole crew together and say, oh my God, I don't know if I'm going to get through this.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? And they are right. And this is something that we have to learn, I think, as guys, particularly if you're sold the Disney narrative on relationships. You have this sense that, yes, I'm going to meet this woman and then she is going to be my everything. She's going to be my protector. Effectively, she's going to be like a surrogate mother, you know? So I'm going to be upset about something and then I can go to her and she's going to nurture me and look after me and everything else. Now, the reality is, I think, more balanced than that. So what these guys are saying is, yes, you actually probably can show some vulnerability to an extent, but you don't want to be showing too much, all right? And that's why you need this solid group of guy friends who you can go to with these things. And that's exactly the way that I've organized it, right? So in my own life, if I will spend a lot of time talking to guy friends about situations, about things that are going on, they won't be things that I will then present to the woman in my life. Okay, that will be separate because I know that Orion talks about the captain of the ship. Okay, right. She doesn't want a guy who's going to be like blowing like a reed in the wind. At the same time, though, and with all of this stuff, it's all nuanced, and you can go too far one way or too far the other way. At the same time, though, I think if you show no vulnerability at all, then that can be a little bit inhuman, that can be a little bit kind of dark, and that cannot be necessarily the most attractive quality either. So you've got to find balance with all of this stuff. And I think this is where guys get it wrong or find it difficult, because they watch a load of Andrew Tate and they think, okay, I've got to be 2D alpha the whole time. Or they go too far the other way and it's all about just being a simp, and that's no good either. You need to get somewhere in the middle to get the balance right. Please do like the video if you haven't done so. Questions in the chat. So marriage causes divorce. Says the average marriage is around 7 to 12 years. Indeed. And longevity is not success. Best puss is new puss. I don't know what he means by that, but he's got some little cat emojis there. You need to be complete with an interesting lifestyle, not incomplete and looking for a woman to be your life. Yeah, that's true. I think you need to have your own thing going on, all right? And then she is a complement to that. But you can't, you have to man up. Like, literally, you have to man up. You have to be the one who's like, right, I'll handle this. I'll get it done. I'll figure this out for us, okay? I want you by my side, but I'm going to be the one who's going to figure this shit out. That's the right balance, okay? There will be occasions, then maybe you're, like he said, you know, he's not feeling so good. He's going to just relate that to her, but he's not going to go too much into that, okay? Because that's not what her role is, and that's not what his role is in regard to that partnership.
Oh, geez, I'm not really sure we're going to be able to survive. They're going to be looking for the next exit off that boat, and they'd be right to do it. But it obviously can't hide the fact that there's a squall coming. So the idea is to directly face the issue, talk about what's going to be done to address the issue, and instill hope that we're going to get through it together. I think that's kind of the recipe for doing that.
Beautiful illustration. It kind of felt like that's the way it was with my wife. I'm just feeling a little bit depressed and didn't go in a lot of detail. You know, she kind of contributed by cutting some fruit. I took care of me by getting in the gym and get a workout in. I'm getting out of the shower. You know, she says, "Are you feeling better?" I said, "Yeah." You know, "Thanks for the fruit." So, you know, we worked together. But no, I didn't dump that on her that she had to figure out how to get her husband over this temporary depression. I took responsibility for it. A lot of this, just tell her I got to the gym. I know always makes her more attracted to me.
A lot of the advice about self-improvement for men, it kind of feels ultimately like Buddhism at its core, in the sense that, like, people often go to Buddhism because they want to escape suffering, right? And the Buddha says, well, the root of suffering is desire. Well, and the desire to escape suffering is a desire. So, like, it's this kind of a paradox. So if you say, well, the way to get with women is to not care to get with women. So it's like, okay, if I stop caring, then I will get the women. It's just, it doesn't quite make sense.
I don't actually teach that.
It kind of, well, so before Dr. Glover addresses that, I would say it actually does make sense, or rather it does work in a counterintuitive way, in the sense that as I've gotten older and I've been less bothered really about getting with women, in fact my dating life has improved, or at least the ease with which I've been able to meet women has increased, right? It's not this huge existential struggle that it used to be. And the weird thing is that I'm older, right? I'm nearly, hitting the half-century mark, right? So theoretically, it should have been easier for me at the age of 25 than it is now. But actually, the opposite has been true. And I think there are various reasons for that. I think my value is higher now than it was then. But fundamentally, I think that when you really, really want something to the point that it's driving you to distraction, like you really want to get laid, you really want to find a girlfriend, you really want to get intimacy with a woman, you almost sabotage yourself. Whereas counterintuitively, when you get to a point where it's like, do you know what? Yeah, it's nice, but I kind of don't give that much of a fuck because I'm happy to go to bed and have a nice cup of tea. Counterintuitively, then, what you find is more women are attracted to that because you are outcome independent, because you genuinely don't give a fuck, because you're not chasing them around like all the other dudes are, okay? So we'll see what Dr. Glover has to say now, but I think actually, contrary to Orion's point, it does work, that the less that you want it, being intimacy, sex, relationships, the more that they're going to fall in your lap, assuming you've got the rest of the shit together.
I actually do quote the Buddha at times, but I don't teach it. I don't teach indifference. And Buddha didn't teach indifference either.
He taught non-attachment, which might not be the same thing.
I define it differently. I talk about being outcome agnostic. So, for example, I talk to this. Well, another way I put it is being equally
outcome agnostic is a very good way of putting it.
Okay with every possible outcome. Sure. So I'm talking to a woman in public. For me, being non-attached is, again, I'm outcome agnostic. I'm going to talk to her. I'm going to put action into this. If it goes somewhere, great. If it doesn't go anywhere, great. I'm equally okay with either outcome. That I don't call indifference. Indifference would be, I don't give a fuck. I'm not going to even bother. Right. I'm a big fan of taking action, but taking action that's not tied to, it's got to turn out this way or it was a waste, or because that just, I often quote the Buddha says that the attachment's the cause of all suffering. And then I add for guys, it's also the cause of all anxiety. As soon as I get attached, I want that pretty girl to give me a phone number. Your anxiety level's just gone up and you've made her the alpha because she's the decider. And that's not going to play very well. That will not come across as outcome indifferent or outcome, agnostic.
Fair enough. But I can still imagine that there's at least some guys out there who are thinking, maybe not even consciously, but thinking, okay, so if I'm just outcome agnostic, then I will get the girl, then it will work.
So let's address that issue, not about outcome agnostic, but about guys.
Okay.
I love working with guys. My entire business, my career, my life is built around working with men. I was a marriage therapist for 25 plus years. Once No More Mr. Nice Guy came out 20 plus years ago, my business has just moved towards working with guys. I love working with guys. You can take the big stick out and smack guys upside the head, get their attention, say, what the fuck were you thinking? And they'll go, thank you. That helps.
Very direct. I work exclusively with men in my private practice, and I can't tell you how many guys are, when they first meet with them.
All right, so in the chat, people are saying, Eric says, Lyndon says, what are the relationship phases? Pick up, dating, marriage, kids. I like Orion in that his stuff can be used in all phases, even though he hasn't been married or had kids. Yeah, I mean, the only criticism I would level at Orion is that I'm not sure, and this is the criticism that gets leveled at all of us, so I don't see why he should be exempt. I'm not sure what his receipts are, right? I mean, he talks a good talk, and I think it's completely valid, okay? But I'm just putting it out there because people will level this shit at me all the time. So we can level it at him also. I'm not sure what his receipts are in terms of, he's not really a dating coach in the sense that I don't know that he's actually out there doing it, really. I think he's a very good person who is able to articulate the psychological underpinnings of this stuff. I'm not sure that he's a practical guy, particularly, but then he doesn't necessarily need to be, right? His work is still valuable, but I'm just putting that out there. Dr. Glover, I think, even though somebody said who's the old guy or whatever, I think actually Dr. Glover, less so now because it seems like he's married or he's in a living with his woman in Mexico, but I think he was actually out and about on the dating scene, certainly in his 40s and 50s for a long time. So surprisingly, it might be him that's the more seasoned of the two players, but we'll see. And then marriage causes divorce says the 6 stages are pick up, dating, marriage, kids, divorce, financial ruin, and then being allowed to see your kids every other weekend. Very droll. Or indeed not even every other weekend. I have a friend who hasn't seen his kid now for since a couple of months, I think, since before Christmas. So these things are very, very difficult, can be very difficult. Anyway, let's carry on.
Like, don't sugarcoat it. Tell me the ugly truth. I need someone to knock some sense into me. It's so refreshing.
Guys will do that. Yeah, I can't do that with women. I heard Terry Real, who's a pretty well-known marriage and family therapist and feminist, say one time, you can't begin with the woman in marriage counseling because she'll leave. The guy, you can. You can take the big stick out to the guy and he goes, thanks. Nobody's ever put it that way before. I love that about men. Men also drive me fucking crazy. trying to run a business. They won't read the instructions. If they can be confused, they will.
So marriage causes divorces. Orion is a Leonardo DiCaprio. It is a legit lifestyle. Has he said that? Is that his strategy? He's not going to get married. He's going to continue to date. Is that his stated position on this stuff? I'd be interested to know if that's the case.
If they can misinterpret something, they will. If something can be turned black and white, they'll make it black and white.
Because I have essentially been a Leonardo DiCaprio myself, right? I mean, that is my position on it, really, if you're going to break it down like that.
I get no sense of context. I'll have guys say, Robert, I heard on one podcast you said this, but on another podcast you said that. That's a contradiction. And I'll go, what was I talking about on the first podcast? Well, I think you were talking to a guy that just reads self-help books 24/7. I said, okay, stop reading self-help books. But what was the context of the other one? Oh, it's a guy that's never, even asked himself, who am I? I said, well, okay, read a book, whatever. Well, that's just a dumb example. But if guys can do that, they will. And that is why they are a sucker. That's why men are suckers for all the bullshit pushed to them on the internet. I think we passed the 15-minute mark, so we'll bring in that. Everything, for example, these long websites that say, they use these 6 tricks to get every, outrageously hot woman to take her clothes off instantly and get with you. Guys believe that, and we'll read the whole thing, and we'll click on the click funnel, and then we'll go through the upsell, and I go, because we all know what the advantage is of having a crazy hot woman, right? Like we all know what the advantage of that is. I don't know. Actually, explain it to me. What is the advantage of having a crazy hot woman in your life? I've had some. I won't preach the advantages of it. But we all assume men want that. And then just men say, give me the technique. I'll do the technique. How come the technique isn't working? I must not be attractive enough. Or women must...
Okay, so marriage causes divorce. He's the child of a divorce. He saw his father get financially destroyed in divorce. He said he is unlikely to marry. Okay, yeah. Interesting.
I'll be X, Y, or Z because that. So I'm going to go be an incel or go my own way or join a red pill clan or do this because all women are that way. And so this is the stuff we run into with men. I love working with men, but you can always run into that black and white. Well, I heard this. It must be true. And the other thing we'll do is we're constantly searching for more information. It's not like we have enough information to actually apply it and go. Some guy on my online forum the other day said, Robert, basically what he said is, Robert, can you reconcile what you teach about relationship with what John Gottman teaches about relationship with what Red Pill teaches about relationship? I've been reading, and I go, stop, don't do that. You're making yourself crazy. I said, there's probably some overlap between me, John Gottman, and Red Pill. And I said, and we're saying very different things for very different reasons. And if you want me to try to come make them all work together in your mind, I'm not going to do it. Don't you even try. But that's what guys will do. We're always looking for that next shiny thing that's going to be the trick that makes everything work because no one's ever taught us, you have to work at something. You have to actually, bring your A game. You got to show up with your lunch pail. You got to go through the difficult things. You got to learn to deal with tension, with anxiety, and learn to soothe yourself, and learn to ground yourself, and let go of these attachments to outcome that are causing your suffering. Because again, there's so many quick, easy fixes out there on the internet that, let me go pay my money. Let me go pay my money because, this guy tells me it's going to work. And anyway, there's my little rant about how much I love guys and working with guys, because I really do.
I hear you. One thing that I found in my own experience as I went through my self-development process about 10 years ago is that some of the nice guys are right with respect to honesty. When nice guys are dishonest, when they're hiding their intentions, when they're executing the covert contracts, they usually get rejected the vast majority of time, but they tend to get rejected nicely. What I found is that when you start being more authentic, when you start being more honest about your intentions, and when you start being, let's say, more, well, I guess I wasn't quite yet at the outcome agnosticism, but women will reject you. Not all of them. Some of them will accept you, but they'll reject you much more forcefully.
Good.
It's like I've never been so, how do I put this? The people who have hurt me the most in life have been women who realized they weren't going to get what they wanted from me.
Okay. How'd they hurt you?
With yelling and screaming, verbal abuse, destroying property, false allegations, spreading rumors, reputation destruction, things like that.
What did that have to? I'm actually confused. What did that have to do with you being truthful and upfront?
What I'm suggesting is that when you're nice, you tend to not get what you want, but you often don't get you don't get like the vindictiveness.
The crazies?
Kind of.
I don't know. That's not been my experience. The nicer I was, the crazier the women I attracted because I put up with it. Here, let me back up just a little bit. When you mentioned the rejection, I'm a big fan of rejection. I preach it in my materials for dating. Is if we're going to have an intention, if the intention is I want that girl to like me, I want that girl to give me a phone number, that probably is going to lead to suffering, to manipulation, to you being less than direct. But if your intention is to, I call it get to rejection quickly. In business, it's called fail forward, fail fast, that kind of mentality. Just go for it. Go all in with it and see what happens. I have found that, if I'm just fully me, don't hold anything back. One of the things I teach guys, and again, guys want to turn everything into a technique. I teach something I call the 3 T's: touch, tease, and tell. I never meant it to be a technique, but guys will always go, teach us more about how to touch. Teach us more about how to tease. I go, no, that's just a reminder. Don't hold back. If you have the impulse to touch her, touch her. If you have the impulse to tease her, to be playful. If you have the impulse to tell her what to do, do it. Don't hold back. Act on impulse. Be you. Don't hold anything about you back. Now, the more you're not being you, and the more you're being you and not holding anything back, you will find out really quickly how that lands. And that's what you want to know. If you're being nice and using covert contracts, and what I call nice guy seduction, of doing things for her, listening to her for hours on end, paying off her car payment, whatever it is, you can never find out is she into you or not. But if you actually don't hold back by practicing what I call getting to rejection quickly, you can let go of your crush, you can let go of whatever unrealistic fantasy you had about her, and move the fuck on and open the door for somebody that's actually going to come into your life and treat you well.
Yeah, absolutely. So we should be leaning into rejection, okay, at all times. We should be leaning into rejection. And I think that's kind of what he's saying here. I mean, they're going around the houses with this a little bit, but ultimately what he's saying is be authentically yourself. And if you get rejected, then good. Okay. So, and this is why we've always encouraged guys to, when I worked with Tusk and doing my own trainings and so on, we've always encouraged guys to be more sexual, broadly speaking. I mean, but what I mean by that is not being crude. It's not being sort of doing anything outrageous. It's just that when you're doing an approach, it's very, very clear that the undertone of that approach is man to woman. There's that polarity there. You find her attractive. You are there because she's somebody that you want to get to know, but you want to get to know her because you find her attractive. Okay, you're not trying to hide that. You're not trying to pretend to be friends with her. You're not trying to pretend to just sort of sneak in there through the back door and hope that one day something happens. You're being completely out there as far as that's concerned. Now, then, if she rejects you early on, good. Because now you have your answer. What you haven't done is wasted 6 months in the friend zone, not getting anywhere, and then getting really hurt at the end of it. Okay, it's much better to authentically own, and this is why the godlike sexual magnetism side of things is so important in the Edge program, because it's so important to own that side of yourself, come what may. And what may come, and what often does come, is rejection, because she doesn't like you like that, or she's not available like that, or she just doesn't see you in that way. Okay, fine, but you've cut to the chase very quickly. And more than that, you remain true to yourself, right? You have the self-respect to think, okay, so I went in there, I was attracted to her. I made that clear, that I wasn't trying to hide it. I wasn't trying to conceal the fact. I wasn't trying to snake my way in there, And okay, she didn't like me, but at least I gave it a go. And now I can move on from that, and none of us have wasted any time, and it's all good. All right. Far better to be like that than to be this guy who was like, I was friends with her for 10 years, and I was hoping something was going to happen. And, then she got engaged, and I had to support her through that. And then she broke up, and I hoped I might get back in there. And then she got engaged to some other dude. You don't want to be that guy. You want to be the guy who is authentic in where he's coming from the male-female polarity aspects of things from the beginning. She is aware of that, even if it's not verbally stated, right? That is the undertone of it. And then she gets to either accept you or reject you on that basis, okay? It's not about messing around. And he talks about covert contracts. Robert Glover talks about covert contracts in No More Mr. Nice Guy. You're not making this kind of covert contract, which is like, oh, I'll be really friendly with you and I'll help you move house. And then hopefully you'll sleep with me as a repayment for that. It's not that kind of expected thing. It's just it's very much out there authenticity, okay, this rawness. And not everyone's going to accept you on those terms, and that's absolutely fine, okay? It doesn't matter, okay? It's better to, as he says, I think just now, fail fast, fail quickly, move on, okay? We've got a few comments here. Yeah, she's not your girl. It's just your turn. Let her be another man's problem. My longest is 13 years. Eric says his current one is 7 years. 7-year mark is where the problems start. Yeah, Sucker Free 86. Everyone, please like the video, guys. We've got 36 people in here at the moment. We've had over 40 people in here, which is really good for the channel. So please, everybody, like the video. Please do me a favor. Like the video. It will really help push this one up the algo, which is what we want, because we want to keep making these videos, breaking this stuff down, and really helping you guys with some actionable advice. Dr. Silk is here. Good to see you, Silk. My friend Michael, he says, Troy makes an excellent explanation on the importance of the power of admittance. We do have to admit to the woman we find her attractive or to show our intent. So, yeah, exactly. I mean, and again, it's not about... Often a London day game opener would be to go up and say, hey, you look really nice, or hey, you look pretty, or you look cute. Now, generally speaking, I think that's a good way to go. I think it's quite good to open and make a compliment. You might as well put it out there. But you don't have to. You don't have to verbally state it. But it should be understood, okay? It's the way that you look at her. It's the way you're interacting with her. It's the way your body language is. It's the way that maybe a little bit of a use of touch in a non-creepy way, okay? It's pretty clear that you're hitting on her, okay? And then on that basis, she gets to either accept you or reject you, okay? It's not this cloudy, grey zone, friend zone-y thing where it's all very unclear because the guy isn't putting himself on the line. Because she may then, and I think Orion actually paid lip service to this before, she may be nicer to you and she may humour you for longer, but if you're not really getting what you want out of it, then what's the point of that, right?
Now, the women who are vindictive and treat you badly, now, I've been there too. But the truth of it is that's a boundary issue of a problem that when a guy's trying to get a woman to like them, they tend to ignore those red flags early on. They see the bad behaviors early on. But my tendency, and a lot of nice guys, my superpower is talking a woman down through and over and getting her back to good. And so, unfortunately, if I do that in those early warning signs, it keeps me hanging out with a woman that I'm going to keep seeing a worse and worse side of her. And when a woman lashes out and acts vindictive towards you, I'm going to venture a guess there were probably warning signs that a guy saw that he ignored prior to that. It rarely comes completely out of the blue.
It's possible. And certainly if she didn't run out of the door, I showed her the door very soon afterwards. I guess my point is, I'm agreeing with you in the sense that the more you come into yourself, the more you come into your masculine, the more you're not afraid to want what you want and to live your life as you see fit. I would say a proportion of women become much more attracted to you. And if and when you do not give some of those women what they want, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. They don't really seem to care when the men that they're not attracted to don't give them what they want. That's why I think the nice guys get rejected more softly. Do you understand?
I get that point. And I still don't think I'd want to do it any other way. I heard a quote. I was at a conference years ago with David Data. He wrote the book Way of the Superior Man. Probably a lot of men have heard of that. He made a comment that I had to ponder for a little bit, and then it just really landed. But he said, choose a woman who chooses you.
Absolutely.
And what happens is you probably see guys go, well, I'm choosing that woman because she's hot. But she hasn't chosen us. And now we're doing all these things, jumping through hoops, trying to get her to like us, buying her stuff, whatever our typical way of seducing.
Yeah, okay. And this goes back to the point that I was making that Robert Glover makes in Dating Essentials for Men, which is you want to be looking for signs of high interest and availability. Okay, is she highly interested in you and is she available? If those two things are there and present and correct, you shouldn't have to be jumping through a lot of hoops. And I think that a mistake that guys make, and we've probably all made this mistake at some point in our lives, is trying to make a woman who is not actually that open to us to like us, okay? And so we do lots of different things. We take her on lots of fancy dates. We buy her things. We buy her gifts. We do this. We do that. We do the other to try and make her like us. And actually, really what we should have done was just from the beginning recognized, okay, well, she's just not that into me. There's a book aimed at women called He's Just Not That Into Me. And I mean, guys can reverse that and look at the same thing for themselves. You know, she's just not that into me. You know? Okay, fine. I mean, there's 8 billion people on the planet. There's plenty more out there. There's plenty more fish in the sea. So I'm just going to go out there and find them and not focus my attentions on this one who just isn't, you know, it's just, she's not feeling it for whatever reason, okay? And I think it's a very, very, very simple point, okay? It's not rocket science, but it is something that many men will overlook, okay? Because they get the idea from watching the romantic comedies or the romantic movies that, okay, well, all I have to do is just be super persistent and then it's going to turn her around and she's going to think I'm amazing and I'm going to win the day in the end. And it doesn't usually work like that.
Is to try to get her to choose us. I see married men do this. I did it in a previous marriage. Guys will say, Dr. Glover, you know, we've been married for over 15 years. My wife hasn't wanted to have sex since our kid was born 12 years ago. How can I, you know, turn her on and make her want to have sex? I go, I think your wife quit choosing you a long time ago. And you're still trying to get her to choose you. You know, I've tried everything. So if we choose a woman who chooses us, now a lot of guys, again, going back to that nice guy thing, or just the guy thing, guys will say, well, but I want the hot ones, and the only women that seem to choose me are kind of the fat older ones that I don't really want. And I go, okay, I get it. I'm not going to argue that point. But that's not been my experience. My experience is that I've been out there being me. I'll keep coming back to that. Being me, living my life on my terms, not chasing any woman, not trying to get any woman to like me, and especially not trying to get any woman to have sex with me. That's a point where a lot of guys run into trouble, is we're hiding our sexual agenda while pushing a sexual agenda all at the same time. And I tell guys, if you've got your foot on the gas and her foot's still on the brake, the more you put your foot on the gas, the more her foot's going on the brake. Sure. So trying to get any woman to have sex is usually how guys, you know, end up a hashtag Me Too casualty, is we're trying to push an agenda rather than when the woman has chosen us, she will let us know without a doubt she's ready. She's open. Take me, right? So I want that kind of woman. Now, is that kind of woman maybe going to be disappointed in me if I don't choose her back? Yeah, there's that possibility, but I also found that only seemed to happen if I was maybe in some way either leading her on or didn't end something when it needed to be ended. Because like when I first started dating, because I hadn't had a lot of sex in my second marriage, and I wasn't particularly experienced before marriage, I said, I'm going to say yes to every sexual opportunity. And I did. And I went to what I call my integrated man whore stage. And I was just consciously saying yes and consciously letting women know I was not exclusive. Now, you can tell a woman that, and they can know it intellectually. But once they...
All right, so I Feel Half Naked is saying you can be persistent without spending too much time and money on a girl, keep yourself busy. There are some girls who purposely make you wait for sex. You've got to respect her basic boundaries. Yeah, okay, fine. I mean, I'm not talking about having sex on the first night or anything like that. I mean, that's not my, you know, that's not what I'm about, really. I think if you like the girl, then that's fine. I think yeah, look, if you're talking about, you know, you're talking about waiting 2 or 3 dates or even 4 dates on the outside, okay, fine. You like her, that's not really a problem. I don't have an issue with that. The issue is when guys will get into these long, protracted things that go on for months and months or even years, where nothing's really happening and the intent isn't there. If the intent is there and the girl is still dealing with you, but she doesn't want to have sex immediately, fine. Because she knows, unless, and again, this is where calibration and some basic common sense is required. If you think that she's just you know, milking you for money and free dinners, then that's a different matter. But for the most part, if she knows where you're at and she just has her boundaries, but she's still dealing with you and you can tell that there's an undercurrent of reciprocal attraction there, that's okay. That's not a problem. The problem is when there isn't any reciprocal attraction and you're not really, probably because you haven't expressed or given any indication of the fact that you are sexually interested in her, there's a man-to-woman component to this, and you're still just going on dates with her or just sort of, you know, working on it, then you're, even if you're not investing money, you're investing emotion and you're investing time and you're investing, you know, your spirit into something that just isn't going anywhere. And that, I think, is a very bad place for men to be.
You know, once they feel...
In other words, there's a difference between, you know, waiting it out with a Ukrainian 10 who kind of likes you, but, you know, she's got certain cultural kind of expectations for when sex is going to occur, versus being a chump who is, you know, just holding out for years for some girl who's just never going to be into him.
That attraction. All right, once they're hooked, it's kind of like they forget that. You know, the chemistry takes over, the chemicals take over. And I found that if I kept those going on, just because, well, you know, I'm getting laid, you know, regular, but I knew I did not want what I had a growing sense she wanted. I learned after a few kind of rough experiences in that sooner rather than later, to where it did not keep going on because it was convenient and enjoyable for me. But yet I realized she was getting a deeper connection than I was. So I just took that on me. It saved me a lot of messes further down the road.
I hear what you're saying. You might be right. I do think that potentially means that you're taking, you know, agency away from the woman, in the sense that if she's not getting what she wants, why wouldn't her be her responsibility to take herself out of that arrangement?
But
So-
they don't necessarily. They don't count on
okay.
that.
Yeah, I say this in one of my episodes. People don't want what they want. So people want what they want, not what wants them. And so you can't get someone to like you by liking them more. And one of the worst things that you can do is to start doing things for someone to try to increase their desire for you. In fact, the research suggests that if you actually want someone to like you more, you should ask them to do things for you.
What's the term for that? There's a psychological term based on like a present. It's not the Coolidge effect, but there's another where somebody, there's a term for it. I can't remember the term given to that.
Well,
yeah, psychologically, if you ask somebody to do something for you, they have to justify in their mind
Exactly.
that if I'm doing this for this person, I must value them.
Yeah, I don't do things for any old joker. I don't usually go out of my way for people. So why am I doing it
Exactly.
for Orion? Oh, I must think he's an interesting guy. I must have some.
And we'll talk ourselves into it, and whether or not that lasts very long, I don't know. But yeah, you hit the nail on it. I tell nice guys this: the more you do for a woman, all that's probably going to do is create more expectation that you're going to do stuff for her. It doesn't create a deeper like or attraction on her part.
All right, so this again is where we go back to the nice guy thing, and one of the I feel half naked says compliance. You're right. That's what the term they're grasping for here. Yeah, you want her to feel. You want her to be doing more for you in a way than you're doing for her. And to the previous point about being the guy who's there waiting and he's sort of working on it with this particular girl. I mean, very much depends on context, the kind of girl, the kind of the situation, and the vibe you're getting from her. But in general terms, all I'm saying is that you want to be like somewhere else. So I don't even think it was these guys, or maybe it was these guys, but somewhere recently I saw a video underlining the fact that, I think it was actually Robert Glover who said this. A woman knows within pretty much 3 seconds whether there's a chance that she's going to sleep with you or not, okay? And here we are waiting it out for 3 months or 3 years, working on her, when she knew in the first 3 seconds. Now, obviously, that sense of, okay, this is a guy that I might sleep with versus this is a guy that isn't, that is somewhat changeable, depending on what you do. Like, you can fuck it up, or you can potentially do something to increase your value in her eyes, so and you might change it, but for the most part, she knows pretty early on, okay, is this a viable guy for me or not, okay, on a fundamental raw level. And if you're not, then you're sort of wasting your time if you don't get to that point of rejection more quickly than slowly, okay. That's the fundamental thing. Now, yes, there are outliers, yes, there are different circumstances, blah blah blah, but in general, you want to get to know. That is to say, you want to get to the point of rejection. You want to get to the no more quickly than not, if that possibly makes some sense.
Yeah, let's talk about this, Robert, because I teach that the most common male sexual strategy is to be a taxi cab, in a sense that they show up, they roll up to the woman and say, hey, sweetheart, where do you want to go? I'll take you wherever you want to go. Come on, you want to go to Dubai? You want to go to Miami? You want to go to Vegas? You want diamonds? You want meals? You want drinks? I'm here to make it happen. And a lot of women will get in that cab.
Yeah.
And the guys will drive around for a while, maybe for years. And then one day they might turn around and say, hey, we've been going to where you wanted to go for quite some time. Do you think maybe you could get up here and drive me somewhere? And that woman's going to get the fuck out of that cab, because that's not how cabs work. Can you imagine if a cab driver actually did that in real life? Just say, pull over here. Let me off at this corner. That's good. So when you do start off, when your primary relationship strategy is I'm here to serve you,
right,
well, that's what she's signing up for. And it would be kind of a breach of contract almost if you were to change that further down the road or mid-trip. Like, I can understand why women would bounce at that point.
Well, it is because, I've worked with nice guys for 30 years. And so, for example, if a guy who's been being that nice guy in a long-term relationship, doing everything she wanted, sacrificing his wants and needs, giving up all his guy friends, always being there, beck and call. And now all of a sudden, he reads my book or he comes to therapy with me or whatever. And he starts realizing, I need to say no. I need to have boundaries. I need to make my needs a priority. I need to fill my own bucket. I need to ask for what I want. And he starts doing that.
Oh, it's going to be hard.
Before, I'm going on memory here. This doesn't have to be accurate. But before I wrote No More Mr. Nice Guy, I would say that, that when that happens, I give it about a 50-50 chance of the relationship making it. When the guy starts actually asserting himself, about 50-50 chance. Some women are going to say, finally, you showed up. Where have you been? I've wanted.
So Silk says, from my experience with myself and clients, if you slept with 20 women that took between 3 to 5 dates, most of them would reject you from continued dating if you pushed for first date lay. Yes, I mean, probably. I mean, I wouldn't say that anybody should push for a first date lay, though. I mean, I don't think that's the right thing. I think you can playfully put it out there. I think you can suggest, hey, listen, why don't we go back to my place? We can listen to some music on YouTube. We can watch a movie, whatever. I think you can put it out there. I don't think anybody should be pushing for it under any circumstances, really. And then if you're going to wait for the 3 dates or the 5 dates or whatever, that's kind of down to you. I mean, if you really like her and you can tell there's some reciprocal interest, but she's just, for whatever reason, maybe culturally or whatever it is, she's going to be somebody who is going to want to wait longer until she gets into it. That's fine. That's fine. I don't think anybody should have a problem with that. I mean, I've certainly dated women where, intimacy hasn't occurred until about 3 dates in, sometimes more. Equally, I've also dated women where sex has happened much more quickly than that, and that's been fine as well. It's down to the individual. It's not a hard and fast thing as far as I'm concerned. You know, I'm not on this channel trying to say, hey, listen, this is how you get a woman into bed within 3 minutes, and if you don't, you're a loser. It's not about that. It's about the specific circumstances with that woman. Quite frankly, how much you like that woman. I mean, if you really like her and you think she's great and you enjoy spending time with her, then the 3 to 5 dates or whatever, it's going to go in a flash anyway, right? It's going to be enjoyable for its own sake. If you're just sort of hanging around with somebody who genuinely isn't that interested in you because you can't read the signs properly, and she's sort of stringing you along a bit, and maybe even if you're not that into her anyway, but you don't feel like you've got other options, then that is a problem. Okay, so it's all very dependent on the circumstances with these things.
Women love my book. They love No More Mr. Nice Guy. I mean, there's been no at all negative blowback from women. They want the man to show up. Most do, right? So then as I was writing No More Mr. Nice Guy, I think in the book I might have said, I think maybe it's about more like 60-40 now, that 60% of the relationships won't make it. I think by the time that I finish writing No More Mr. Nice Guy, 70-30. Let's go about 80-20 now, that if the guy changes the fundamental contract of the relationship, maybe 20% of the time the woman's going to go, you know, this may be a challenge. It's going to be a struggle. I'm in though, because I think you're amazing and I want to be with you. But a lot are going to fall away just because they got comfortable with how they thought things were supposed to be, even if it wasn't what they wanted. Because
I think this is important, actually. You have to set the parameters from the beginning. So, for example, if you say you want to be in an open relationship, or a relationship that's open on your end, let's say, and you want to be like, hey, listen, I really like you. You're going to be my main girl, but I want to sleep around. Then fine. But you've got to set that parameter from the beginning. And if she's not on board with that, then the relationship doesn't go forward. Or at least, you know, maybe you put forward that parameter, and then maybe she goes nuts for a bit and she disappears for 5 days, and then she comes back and says, yeah, actually, okay, I'll consider it. And then maybe you can get some agreement. But I think you need to set those things up front. It is very difficult to go down the line in a relationship and then try to change the rules and have her just accept that, right? Because that's not what she signed up for at the beginning. So I think that they're absolutely right about this. Now, again, it's nuanced because you don't necessarily want to be sitting down having big, deeper, meaningful conversations at the beginning of a new relationship, because that's not very sexy either. And that's always been, to be frank, that's always been something I've tended to avoid, because most of the relationships that I've been in have begun casually. And what I've wanted to do is to see, okay, so how do we get on? How do we vibe together? And then if it becomes apparent, you know, right, okay, there's something here, then maybe we start to discuss things further down the line. But I'm not one of those people that would recommend, okay, date 1, date 2, date 3, you're starting to have deeper, meaningful conversations about the direction of the relationship, because I just think that seems premature. At the same time, though, if you do start to get into something serious with somebody, then it needs to be understood where the boundaries are, because changing those once the relationship has solidified itself is going to be very hard. So marriage causes divorce, agreed. First date late equals daddy issues or revenge for ex-boyfriend. I mean, yeah, well, maybe. I mean, Eric, Linda, nice to see these guys disagree and are respectful to each other. Yes, absolutely. Okay, let's see. I don't know if we're going to really have time to go into Chris Williamson's done an interview with him as well. I don't know if we're going to really have time to go into that, but I mean, this one's quite interesting.
I think most of the women actually want to get into the backseat of a taxi driver and have the guy do things for them constantly. But a lot of times the woman's not going to say no to everything the guy wants to do. But then after a while, it starts to feel like the norm. And wait, you're going to take that away from me now? Yeah, that's when you get the reaction.
Easiest way to make a baby cry is give it a lollipop and then take it away. And so even though they might not want even if they might not have wanted a lollipop, I don't think lollipops are that great for babies, right? They've gotten used to it. It's sweet. And now you've given a taste for something that they're going to not be experiencing for a while. And that's really the guy's fault, because he's trained the woman to expect that kind of behavior and treatment over those years. And I say it always gets worse before it gets better, because you have to deal with the extinction bursts that come when you try to modify behavior in a pre-existing dynamic. 80-20, I think, is probably generous.
We can keep evolving the numbers.
Always easier to just do the right thing from the beginning than to try to fix something.
I agree, but how many of us know to do that? You know, I joke that, and I don't joke, I tell the truth. I had a PhD in marriage and family therapy at 29 years old, and I bumbled my way through my 3 marriages. And you know what? I think most of us are going to bumble our way through life. I think that's what happens. Now, hopefully we can get some good guides, some good mentors, some good initiation, some good instruction. But again, kind of going back to, you know, there's so much unhelpful stuff out there available now, is that men often don't know what to pick. Like I said, you know, how do I make, you know, Dr. Glover, John Gottman, and Red Pill all fit together? And you guys are trying to do that. So they don't know what's the good information. And usually the most prominent information is the one that appeals to their most base, easy, what's the easiest way to make this happen in nature?
I hear that, and I believe that all those clickbaity programs that you mentioned earlier exist because
They work.
people are buying them, not necessarily because they work, but because people are buying them.
No, they work because they sell product. That's what I mean.
I see. Okay. For me personally, I've never used one of those. I've never gone down that funnel. But I think for me, what was the source of the greatest misunderstanding about women when I was younger was just the mass media and the culture, movies, pop songs, literature. There's this great play. I don't know if you read a lot of drama, but it's called Boy Gets Girl by.
They're watching Grey's Anatomy. That's just some really cool research that I can say. Yeah. Again, I said earlier, women can be attracted to drug dealers, to guys in prison, will be married to that guy that's stable and, creates a household. And then when they're ovulating, they're attracted to something totally different.
Oh, yeah.
And
I made an episode a long time ago called The Part That Women Always Leave
So this part's interesting now. Let's just have a look at this.
Out. Because if you ask a woman what she's looking for in a man, you'll hear things like, oh, I want somebody who's kind, or I want somebody who is, great with kids, or I want somebody who respects me. And a lot of guys are thinking, okay, well, I can do those things. Why am I not having the success that I would like with women? And I think it's because the part that women always leave out is they want those things, but they want them from the men they're already attracted to.
Yeah.
And so that's the key. It's not like being those things make a woman attracted to you. She just wants those traits in the men that she's attracted to. And so that's the part that men need to hear.
Well, you've probably even seen the studies that say, women will be married to that guy that's stable and, creates a household. And then when they're ovulating, they're attracted to something totally different.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, tricky one, really. I mean, I'm not sure that there's really any getting around hypergamy. Casey Zander did a good video about this the other day where he's saying that the tricky damn thing about hypergamy, that is to say women's desire to mate across and upwards, is that even if you satisfy it in one area, what may then happen is that she starts to get used to that and gets kind of bored with that, and then she wants to see it optimized in a different area. So say that you are the rich, stable, successful guy and you've got all of these things, then that could be great for a while until she gets a bit bored with you, and then she starts to think, well, you know what, money isn't all that. Actually, I want something different. I want some kind of more rawness of experience. I want that kind of more like alpha, don't give a fuck guy. And then suddenly she starts sleeping with the pool boy, okay? And then she gets bored with the pool boy, the young, muscled, etc., guy. And then she gets bored with him because it's like, okay, well, he's too young. He doesn't have this. He doesn't have that. He doesn't have life experience. So she goes for the older dude, right? And then it's this constant battle, right? So whatever she gets, it's because no guy with the best will in the world is going to be able to satisfy everything at the same time. Okay, no guy is going to be this superhuman who's covering all of the bases adequately. Okay, there's always going to be something that gets missed out. Well, for the most part, right? She's looking for the guy who satisfies most of the checklist. Okay, in order to consolidate with. But the difficulty you've got is that then 5 years down the line, she's like, oh, fuck, but actually there's this bit of the checklist he's not quite really covering off. And maybe if I'd have gone with that guy, things would have been much better. So, yeah, it's a tricky one, really.
I can't bring this up as an accurate statistic, but I recall reading before that statistically 30% of children in monogamous, intact marriages, 30% of the kids are not biologically the husband of the woman.
I heard 10%. 30% is really high, but okay.
Well,
even 10% is really high.
Split the difference, right? And what's that saying is that, again, I said earlier, women can be attracted to drug dealers, to guys in prison. They're what the women don't tell. Well, let's even back this further up. Some really cool research that I came across a while ago. Is a university is in Canada. It's a Canadian study, but they studied a lot of people around sexual arousal, and they hooked up men and women, of all sexual orientations. Hooked the man up to measure engorgement in his genitals, and the women as well. And they gave them a button, and then they showed them videos. Okay, and the men were really, believe it or not, very white bread and very predictable in what they both physiologically responded to and what they pushed the button. Basically, heterosexual guys were attracted to heterosexual sex with some threesomes thrown in.
I've always felt this, actually. I've always believed this. I think men are actually pretty vanilla for the most part. I think us guys, we're pretty, he calls it white bread. I think we're pretty, girls will say to me, oh, what are your fantasies? Troy, what are your deepest, darkest fantasies? And I'm like, I don't know, 2 pumps and 2 pump chump, and then I'll have a cup of tea and fall asleep. I mean, that's kind of it, really. I mean, I'm attracted to attractive women, and like he said, a couple of threesomes thrown in, all good, right? Whereas women have this much richer kind of fantasy life. It's all of this 50 Shades of Grey stuff. It's all this being, he took me to a dungeon and chained me up and left me, blindfolded me, and blah blah blah, and used me as a coffee table and all this kind of thing. Guys are much more straightforward, I think, for the most part.
Conscious of their arousal. That's kind of your
they were conscious of their arousal. A gay men were attracted to gay sex. What got reported in all the media was a part of the study that had women had surprisingly this really wide variety response to sexual fantasy, or whether it was men of the opposite sex, female sex with gorillas. It was at all the extremes that the women were having a response to, and that's what the media reported on. I went and found the original study because I'm that kind of person. I want to say, well, really, what was here? There was another statistically significant finding that none of the popular media reported. And there was a statistical significant difference between what the woman's body was responding to and what her finger pushed.
Yeah,
With men, there wasn't. We're pretty predictable. With the women, their body was turned on by one thing, but they didn't push the button. Or they pushed the button and said they're turned on, but their body wasn't. And in that, I tell men, don't listen to what women tell you of what they want and what they're attracted to. So when they say, I want a nice guy, part of the month, part of them really does believe that. Another part of the month is, oh, I just got to get fucked. But, and I'm making maybe an exaggeration, but maybe not that far. Okay. No. So don't buy into what your sister tells you they want, what your mother says women want, what even, the nice girls that you're seeking the approval from. Don't buy into what they tell you that they want. Watch what they do. Watch. And unfortunately, that's when men go to that point of, well, they're just attracted to like the alpha males and the bad boys. Because again, we just get that funnel vision.
They do like bad boys though. That's
not, but when the men go, well, they're only attracted.
No, that's not true.
And I can tell guys, you can actually be a decent guy, a decent human being, and still create bad boy energy, attraction in women.
Yeah, and I mean that's kind of what we're trying to teach really on all of these things. I mean, when we talk about this bad boy energy, nobody is, well, I mean, certainly I'm not on my platforms. I'm not suggesting to anybody to go out and become actually sociopathic or actually this or actually that. What I am talking about is turning up the dial on some of those non-nice guy traits, because ultimately it works, okay? And with the best will in the world in life, we have to do what works, or we should optimize for what works as opposed for what doesn't work. I think that makes sense, whether that's in business, whether that's in marketing, whether that is in sales, or whether that's in dating, right? I mean, we need to optimize for those things that work. Raymond Wing says, thanks for tuning in, bro. Good to see you here. Says, my ex, super feminist, turned me into a nice guy, and then she left me, lol. Absolutely. We'll do an episode about Practical Female Psychology by Franco and I forget the other authors, but a very interesting breakdown in terms of that happening, right? So over the course of the relationship, she chips away at the rough edges. She makes you into the guy that she imagines that she wants, and then she becomes less attracted, and then she kicks you to the curb for somebody else, right? It's a terrible, terrible irony with this whole thing, but we have to be aware of these dynamics.
And it can be pretty simple, not being too available, right? Not giving them gifts, asking them to do something for you. They're just little tricks that create that same kind of energy that the bad boys create without you having to be an asshole.
Okay, that's interesting because I've shared similar tips on my channel, and often it's generally well received, but probably the most common pushback is something along the lines of, oh, Orion, you've made it, this is manipulative. Shouldn't I just be myself? Like, why do I have to play these games in order to keep a woman interested in me? What would you say to that?
I'm saying what that guy's really saying is he doesn't want to put any work into getting what he says he wants. He's just as deceitful as the woman who says, I want a nice guy. He says, I want a woman, but don't ask me to really work on myself or actually work at doing.
Yeah, marriage causes divorces, betarization by 1,000 concessions. Absolutely. And look, here's the thing, guys. We can mock from the sidelines and say, well, you shouldn't make concessions in the relationship and so on and so forth. But it's very, very difficult once you're in a formalized monogamous relationship, and certainly once you're within a marriage, to not concede on certain points. Because look, I mean, we don't want to, because we're all nice guys. We're too much nice guys. But also, look, we want a quiet life. We don't want to be pissing off our wife the whole time or our girlfriend the whole time. We want her to be happy because we do genuinely kind of want her to be happy. And we don't want to be in constant argument. So there will be concessions. And as there are concessions made, then so the process starts, the betarization process starts, okay? And that is the difficulty. And it's very, very hard to get around it, which is why, monogamy, long-term relationships, very, very difficult.
Things that actually makes me attractive to women. I really just want to play video games and surf the internet and jack off to porn. Please don't ask me to actually work on myself. That's what I would say to that. Again, guys say they want a lot of stuff, just like women say they want a lot of stuff.
Wanting is free. It costs nothing to want.
There you go. So, and then guys, then I'll get the other thing from guys. They'll say, okay, Robert, here's a contradiction. You say, work on these things in you and they will make you attractive. Then they'll go, that's a contradiction because now it sounds like you're trying to do things to get women to be attracted to you. And I go, okay, let's take a breath here. There are side effects of you working on you, positive side effects. If you work on you because you want to live your best life, you want to get out of your comfort zone, you want to live at your edge, you want to level up to the best version of you,
edge. The edge is still open until the end of the 14th of February, by the way. So drop me an email, troy@realtroyfrancis.com, if you want details on the program.
Your best life. You want adventure. You want opportunity. You want fun. If you do the things that require focus and effort and discipline and consistency to do those things, I found there's a side effect over here that all of a sudden, you notice a lot of women are checking you out. A lot of women are sending you those indicators of interest that all the gurus out there get so wrong. Oh, she's twirling her hair. No, it's not. That's an indicator of a stupid woman. Stupid women twirl their hair. That's not an indicator of, oh, she crossed her ankles. Oh, give me a break. Come on. No, when they lean over and give you a cleavage shot, there's an indicator of interest. When they walk in front of you 3 times for no reason, that's an indicator of interest.
All right, we've got 41 people in here, so we want 41 likes, please, on the video. Thank you so much. Thank you for the support for this channel so far. It's very gratifying. We are moving up the ranks. We want to push this video up the algo. Take it to the moon, guys.
Touch your arm, when they laugh at your dumb jokes, those are indicators of interest. My wife taught me this one, when they jut a hip, that's primate behavior. Primates jut their hips to show they're ready, they're receptive for sexual intercourse. We're fucking primates, but we think that, oh, whatever we think that women are or aren't, we ignore their actual indicators of interest, because either we think they're not sending that to me, or I'm not alpha enough for them to want me, but they are. That's what, when I got really successful at getting with women, it's because I started actually understanding their indicators of interest. And it isn't what all the pickup dudes teach you. I'm not watching, are their eyes constricting or dilating or not.
I could never see that anyway. I mean, how could you seriously tell whether someone's, I mean, it's like I don't know, man. You got to have good eyesight to be able to pick up on that.
Too much work. But when I actually worked at me, getting out of my house, being a social animal, overcoming, my social anxieties and discomfort, talking to people, being bold, being brave, being funny, not holding back, living life on my terms, saying, come on, let's go do this. When I started being that, all of a sudden, a lot of women were choosing me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very simple message, but it's very true. And a lot of people who get into this content and they want to, they want the results, but they're not willing to do what he just said, which is actually very simple, which is get out of the house, start being super social, start leading, being decisive, saying, right, let's go and do this, let's go and do that, getting phone numbers, getting contacts, all of that stuff, pushing into your comfort zone, pushing out of your comfort zone. Very, very simple, but it's necessary, and most people don't want to do it.
And I thought, wow, this is really pretty interesting. I didn't have to do anything to try to get them to like me. I was just out having a good time on my own, and all of a sudden, they're paying attention.
Do you think? Well, you wrote No More Mr. Nice Guy 20 years ago, you said?
Yeah, long before I knew any of the stuff you and I are talking about.
What was the trajectory there? Like, did you experience something that was even before, not before the entire internet, but before the internet kind of as we know it? Did you experience some fame as a consequence of that book?
Not early on. I'm maybe just coming into my fame, perhaps.
Well deserved.
Whatever.
You think that has something to do with it?
With what?
The effortlessness with which you attract women these days?
When I was dating, well, yeah, nowadays, I don't know. My wife points out all the women who I seem to be attracting nowadays. I actually am not interested in and not paying all that much attention until, she gets mad at me and says, that woman was flirting with you. And I go, that's my fault. How? You have a man that women want. You're not complaining about that, are you? I don't actually respond exactly like that, but that's the bottom line. No, when I was in my late 40s and 50s and started having this kind of success, I'd gotten out of a long bad marriage. I hadn't been sexual for very long, very much for very long. I was actually coming off having that heyday of my integrated man whore phase. Let the women know this was not the beginning of a relationship. The women know that, if you meet them somewhere and they go home with you, they know that's not the beginning of a good relationship. They know they want to get fucked, and you do too. So I was very conscious and integrated, very truthful. I mentioned earlier, I also learned to end those relationships in a timely way and not let them go on to where they became disruptive or ugly, because a woman was starting to want something that I didn't. So I just, fairly early on, we're having sex, and it was just wild and crazy good stuff. And, again, not a lot of women seem to like, that playful nickname stuff.
Is very high. You could say something completely nonsensical and she'd think you're just being silly, and that's one of your best qualities. And if she's not, she's going to think that you had an aneurysm and you need to go to the hospital. So, what really matters is how she feels about you. And she's kind of already made a decision about how she feels about you in advance of really much of anything, usually.
I think we've seen those statistics too, that probably, they say in the first 3 seconds, a woman knows if there's a possibility she might sleep with you. And then while we guys are spending 3 months, doing the nice guy seduction, they decided in the first 3 seconds, they're not getting.
Okay, so look, this is an important point. So he's saying within the first 3 seconds, she has, people have said in the chat, right? You could say she knows if she's going to sleep with you, or at least she knows if she isn't going to sleep with you. So the doomer guys are going to jump on that and they're going to say, well, it's because it's all about looks. It's because if you're good looking, she's going to want to sleep with you. And if you're not good looking, but it isn't just about that. Yes, that plays a part, but it's also, and we touched on this earlier in the stream, it's also about that energetic exchange that happens at the point of transaction, as Orion said, okay, at the point of meeting, when you first meet up with her, when you first stand in front of her, what does she feel? What is the energy that's transferred between the two of you, okay? Yes, your looks are, an element, but equally there's that thing, okay? There's that X factor, there's that edge, there's that riz that we keep talking about. How does she feel when she's in your presence? And that is the thing to focus on. And that's why with a lot of this stuff, teaching this stuff, what we really try to focus on is optimizing those first few seconds when you first meet and coming across in the best possible way. And there's so many different factors to that, including the way that you look, the way that you dress, your demeanor, your gait, the way that you walk, the way that you carry yourself, your body language, your eye contact, what you say, your tonality, your blah. I mean, there are just so many different components to it, but it is so important because that first impression is very, very significant in the whole process. But yeah, I mean, he's right. She decides in 3 seconds whether she's up for it or not, and you're spending 3 months trying to get into bed with her, or 3 years. I mean, it's,
Naked with us, right? Mm-hmm. Again, the mistakes that men make. So I tell guys, and again, guys could probably misspin this one as well. If a woman is into you, you almost can't fuck that up. And if she's not into you, there's almost nothing you can do to switch that around either. That's just reality.
Absolutely. So you're looking for signs of high interest and availability. Okay, this is what he says in Dating Essentials for Men. Look for those, and then move forward with women who are demonstrating those. If she's not showing those, if she's showing low or medium interest, mediocre interest, like, meh, yeah, whatever, don't pursue it. If she's not available, don't pursue it. If she is available and she's showing high interest, then pursue it. Okay, that's where the game is played.
And like you said, I call her Mexican whore. Like that was a plus, right? That wasn't going to fuck it up because she was into me.
Yeah, a woman who's 10 out of 10 attracted to a guy will do scary things. She will hide the body. She will lie to the
You're
cops.
talking about my wife. You're talking about my wife. She's scary fun.
That's great. Robert, we're coming up on time. I'd like to know a little bit more about is it fair?
Okay, so look, that's pretty much all of that one. I think you'll agree that was a pretty interesting interview. We might have a quick look at the Chris Williamson one, just because actually the good thing with the Chris Williamson one is it's broken into chapters, so we can have a look at maybe a couple of just little bits from it before we finish. But that being said, put any other comments that you have into the chat. There's a few little bits and pieces we can look at here. I think he's got an interesting thing here.
So the frustration,
which I'll show you in a second. So SJ is saying, did Glover call you out? I don't think so. Who taught you? What was your Batman origin story? Too long to go into now. A lot of self-teaching, and then I hung out with people like Tom Torero and a bunch of these other guys, but that's for another episode, I think. And also, I've kind of covered this stuff already. If you look at the first video on this channel, I talked a lot about that there. Eric Linden, those women only want no strings with top 5 chadrones. Okay, so let's just have a quick look on the Chris Williamson one. He did this interview, and let's have a look at this. There's a little chapter here called Using Aggression as a Masculine Tool. So let's see what they have to say about that.
So the frustration and the resentfulness, that's coming from offering to the world something that you think should be universally liked. There's no way that anybody could be offended by what I'm doing. I'm following the rules. I'm offering the world lots whilst asking for nothing in return.
Yep.
And the fact that not asking for something in return results in you getting nothing in return.
Funny how that works. I don't know.
But I suppose this as well plays into the dishonesty bit. And it's so, I understand. I would say that I'm very much in nice guy category, very much a people pleaser. My temperament is to be averse to conflict as well. I've made a dent in many ways, but it's been done by weaving my way through avoiding much of the conflict that I would maybe need to. So I suppose I can be, at least in some regards, a paragon or like a role model for the successful nice guy in many ways.
Okay. And me too. Again, I don't like conflict, but I'm doing okay.
There's something I always felt the fact that I wasn't like my go-to isn't typically aggression. That's not what I lean into. Despite the fact I've got a background of fighting and doing other things and physical training and stuff like that, I always felt like it emasculated me. The fact that there was something more heroic about being someone that was quick to anger. There was something kind of typically masculine about that. And I think I was not strong enough to say ashamed, but it didn't feel as grand to be someone who would be. I know that there's an ability in being under control, having your emotions under control, but there's also a degree of fragility, I think, that you can sometimes feel with that also.
Or passivity, you might say. I think what he's saying is that it's slightly convoluted. I think what he's saying is that he felt that in suppressing or being of a mechanism, built in a way that he suppressed that masculine kind of oomphness, that he felt a little bit less than. And I think he's right to, in a way. I think it makes sense. So let's see what Robert says.
Well, let me give one way to maybe look at the model and see if it fits what you're saying. Is that when I was writing No More Mr. Nice Guy, I really focused a lot on shame being a core foundation of nice guy syndrome, that internalized belief, I'm not okay, and inaccurately internalized belief from our earliest life experience, a few weeks old, few months old. By the time I finished writing the book and it was, getting ready to be published, by that time I'd really come to also see that anxiety plays maybe an equally significant role in nice guy syndrome. to where everything that nice guys are doing is trying to manage that sense of shame. I'm not okay. I'm unlovable. I'm defective. And their anxiety states. I might piss somebody off. I might get rejected. I might get hurt. I might lose. I might look foolish. So, both of those states really play into it. And one of the things I've come to see is that whether we've got, just to kind of break it down, whether we got kind of the asshole jerk over here, that fighter, that quick to fight guy, or the wussy doormat, the nice guy over here that's the avoidant and kind of doesn't like the conflict. I think they're both on the same continuum. I think they're both in a fight, flight, freeze mode of managing their inner states of anxiety. The nice guy is in the flight, freeze, fawn, sometimes added to that list. And what we call the jerk is in the fight mode. Now, they're both still just trying to manipulate people and situations outside of them because they're anxious. The nice guy does it by being nice and avoid.
Yeah, but I mean, look, I don't know, man. Isn't he slightly contradicting his earlier position here, though? Because isn't it more, if you had to say, well, which of those is the more authentic position, isn't the fighting bad boy jerk guy more authentic because he's acting on what's actually inside him, whereas the nice guy is suppressing that? I would think. I could be wrong, though. Let me know what you think.
And not upsetting anybody and, waiting for it to blow over, all that kind of, whereas, the guy at the other end of the spectrum is.
Oh, right. Here we go. Right. So look, so SJ says Chad Williamson has the art of panda down, Mike Sartain tier panda. I don't know. So why are you saying that? Explain why you're saying that. I don't really, I don't have any massive view on Chris Williamson either way. So I don't, So explain more what you mean by that. And then marriage causes divorce. I respect Troy more than Chad Williamson. Troy's had to navigate the dating world the hard way. What? Because I'm so fucking ugly. It's like, Jesus Christ, it's been so fucking hard, guys. It really has. Looking like this. No. With all seriousness, Chris Williamson obviously is a very good-looking guy. I get that, but who cares? He's not a dating coach anyway, really. I mean, he talks about these issues. He's not really a dating coach. So I would say how he has or has not navigated the dating world is, again, people throw these criticisms all the time at Rollo Tomasi, and it's like, well, look, if someone's articulate and they can build interesting conversations around this material, then how successful or not they may or may not be with the women in their private life. It's the same with that Orion dude. Is he out every night getting laid, or is he, has he been in a dry spell for 15 years? I don't know. Does it really matter, though? Because not everybody, the cry for receipts that comes out the whole time, I think it's just a bit, it's kind of dumbing down of the conversation, really, because it's like, I think if somebody is articulate, they understand the issues and they're able to talk about it in a way that is interesting and useful and maybe a bit entertaining, that in itself is a good thing. So I don't think that we really need to delve too deeply into Chris Williamson's Chadness and how many birds he's had sex with or any of that. I don't think it's particularly relevant to the material here.
He's just quick to react with aggression to manage the people and situations around him. So he doesn't feel afraid and anxious. And so men will often, they'll read my book or, they'll hear some of my information and they'll say, Robert, I get that being a nice guy isn't working and I don't want to be that, but I don't want to be the asshole either. And, where's that middle ground? And I go, I actually don't know where the tipping point is between two dysfunctional extremes. It doesn't exist, right? What we're actually talking about is going to a different plane, a different level, where we actually learn to soothe ourselves, where we actually learn to be assertive, where we actually learn to have boundaries, where we actually learn to be differentiated and ask ourselves, what do I want? And follow through on it. Where there's a whole different plane of behavior versus just, what do I do to not feel anxious here? But again, the nice guy and the jerk, probably neither one is aware that they're trying to manage their anxiety states. And it isn't until you actually get told that maybe that's what you're doing, you go, oh, wow, I never thought about that.
Okay, but what's more attractive, right, to the woman who's standing in the bar? If I had to put money on it, probably the jerk, right? Who, yes, he might be. It's the old kind of thing of like, oh, he's weak inside because he's trying to do this, he's trying to manage his anxieties and stuff like that. That might be true, but ultimately, is that raw, almost bestial, animalistic kind of masculine behavior, that intent, is that going to be more sexy to the average woman? Probably yes. So it's kind of, is it a bit of a cope on Robert Glover's part to be saying, "Oh, that guy's just trying to manage his his anxiety"? I mean, yeah, sure, right? I mean, toxic guys are in no doubt trying to manage some aspects of their personality, some difficulties that they've had, you know, some weaknesses that they've had. Does that make them less hot? No. So, you know, it's kind of like it seems like a little bit of a get out clause there, to be fair.
And then
SJ says, my criticism of Chad Williamson isn't an ex-TV star talking nonsense. He isn't in the trenches. It's all pander, no fire or smoke. He wouldn't dare offend women. More play, it's safe pattern. Well, yeah, okay, fine. I mean, yeah.
Then you actually can feel your anxiety.
I mean, massive. I mean, he's very big now, so obviously he probably has to be somewhat careful. If you call that pandering, okay, fine. I get where you're coming from. But I think he has some interesting guests on. I think he has some interesting stuff to say or some interesting conversations. So I don't have a huge issue with it personally. I don't think, and not everybody has to be a table thumping red pill firebrand. You know, I think there's room for different sorts of discourse in the space. To be honest, but that's just my view. I mean, I don't think you could say Orion is. Well, maybe Orion is more offensive. Actually, I don't know. Maybe he is a little bit more panders less in a quiet sort of way
than trying to just manage it to where it doesn't, make you feel so anxious.
Is it a desire to feel safe then, to feel
Sure.
reassured?
Yeah, I think, safety is at the core, because when I took Child Development 101 back in grad school, I think the very first thing they told us, one of the few things maybe I remembered, was that for every child, abandonment equals death. So children come into the world inherently vulnerable. Right? There's no one to take care of us. It takes humans longer to mature into self-sufficiency than any other animal on the planet. Our grandfathers.
By the way, we've got nearly 40 people in here, so please do like the video if you haven't done so already. Please, from the bottom of my heart, it will really, really help us out because we're pushing this thing up the algorithm. Really want to get this video out there because there's some important stuff we're discussing here. So give us a like if you haven't done so already. Also do, please, subscribe to the channel and hit the notifications bell so you're aware when new videos are coming up.
Maybe that was about 12 or 14. My age was more, considered 18, 21, 22. Now it's like 35 for a young man to, mature, to be able to take care of himself. That's a joke. But it's true. So we're dependent, completely dependent. And if somebody doesn't take care of us, we die. So if we get abandoned, neglected, we die. So I know for me, like when my wife, my wife Lupita and I have been married for 7 years now, Mexican woman I met here in Mexico. And she gets a look on her face. And like, I'll go into, this mode of, I got to fix it. She's upset. She's angry. I got to make it better. And, I've been working on this stuff for 30 years. So, it's not like I don't know, what's happening. And I'll just watch myself have this anxiety state that I gotta talk her down through, over, get her back to good, make her happy again. And I'm thinking, why am I worried about with this short little Mexican woman? What look she has on her face? I love her, of course, but why is that triggering such depth of anxiety? And really,
Suck386 says definitely the jerk. I think he means more attractive. I was at a bar one time. Some guy got in my face and called me a lesser than a man, and I got in his face, and I pretty much showed him what type of man I was. And the girl I was with gave me a look like she wanted to get underneath the table, if you know what I mean. So yeah, for sure. I mean, you could say that, you could argue, well, displays of unbridled aggression are actually a sign of weakness, and it's the sign of the guy who hasn't dealt with his inner demons, his childhood traumas and stuff, so therefore he's a weaker guy than the guy who's very stoic and calm. But ultimately, it's more about perception than that reality, and the woman is still going to be viscerally turned on, I would suggest, by the more bad boy characteristics, the guy who is prepared to get up and fight and all of that kind of stuff. Again, not recommending this, guys, I'm just sort of from an objective point of view, subjective, I suppose. I'm saying what I think. SJ says, I thought Rollo's criticism of Chad Williamson was jealousy, but he is right. He wouldn't point out the 80-20. Well, I mean, if you mean 20% of guys getting the action versus 80%, I think he has talked about that, hasn't he? Or the abundance of divorce. I think he has talked about that. Nor the carousel or the marriage plan after 30. Well, you might be right about the latter two, but I think he has talked about the first two. Again, but I mean, look, I mean, it's, well, whatever. I mean, you don't like him, that's fine. You don't have to like everybody, but I think that measuring everybody by, no, there are different kinds of content creators, and I don't think you can quite. Chris Williamson, I don't think he's setting out to do the same thing as Rollo, and I don't think he should necessarily be judged on the same standards. I just think he's a slightly different kind of animal, and I think that's okay. But it's up to the individual what they think. Marriage causes divorce, says dangerous equals wet panties. Yes, indeed. Look, we've done a couple of hours now, so I'm going to call this one to a close in a moment. So if you've got any other comments or any other questions you want to put into the chat, do put them in. Let's just see if they finish this section, if he's got anything else interesting here.
Is you really sat with it and worked with it, it triggers a really old emotional state that does feel like I'm going to die. If this doesn't get better right now, I'm going to die. And I don't actually have that thought in my head, but my reaction to it feels that intense.
That's the embodied sensation. If you
That's the embodied, the nervous system, my emotional operating system. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder, stepping outside of relationship.
Okay. They finished that bit. Let's just go over here a second. So I don't know if there was. I think the thing about. All right, here's an interesting one. Let's have a look at this. What nice guys need to know about female attraction. I think the thing about what were they talking about? The hole in the soul, the abandonment issues. I think that's very, very true. I mean, that's a whole other big topic. But I think we do come into the world as children very, very vulnerable, and if you have those abandonment issues, that is a huge problem for sure. Let's just see. It says here what nice guys need to know about female attraction.
Getting into relationships, which are obviously, I think, ground zero for a lot of this stuff. You can kind of hide things away from yourself when it's on your own, and you're in and out of work and all the rest of it. Not everybody is emotionally connected with their work, and not everybody's emotionally connected with how organized their source cupboard is. Relationships, real ground zero. What do nice guys not understand about how female attraction works?
Well, most of us are believing what our mothers told us. If they told us anything, well, just be nice to girls. That's what my mother said. Be a gentleman. Okay. Makes sense. Be a gentleman. And I am. I'm a gentleman, but a woman taught me this one. I always open the door for women. I tell them, wait for me. I'll open your door. Now, if you really break it down, that's me being dominant. I tell them what to do. Wait for me. I'm going to open your door. And of the several hundred women who I've told to do, wait for me. I'll open your door. Only one has pushed back against it, and she pushed back for a while. Then all of a sudden, she quit and kind of decided she actually really liked. Actually, what she did is she jumped my bones in a public place. I said, we need to take this somewhere else. After a while, she'd been pushing back against my dominance. So, for there to be attraction, there has to be a polarity. And polarity involves dominance and submission. I know those are evil, terrible words, because we think about dominant men, making women be submissive.
You're in a safe space here,
okay.
Robert. It's fine.
I'm not sweating it, but yeah, it is going out on the internet, which is fine. And what's happened is the polarity has just switched, where the females have become the dominant players, and the guys have become the submissive players. And then the women go, how come I can't find a guy that turns me on? And the guys are going, how come I can't seem to turn women on? Well, it's reverse the polarity.
Yes, and I think that's a very important point, and it might be a good point to end on, really, because you can't get much more fundamental. Let's just see what he says now, but you can't get much more fundamental.
You can't have polarity. That's attraction without dominance and submission. And the more subtle it is, the more subtle the attraction is. The more blatant it is, tends to be the more intense the attraction is. We've probably all experienced that in one way or another. Now, I tell people you can't have sex without dominance and submission. Otherwise, it's two bodies lying next to each other waiting for something to happen. You got to have fight. You got to have a top and bottom. You got to have a pitcher and catcher, right? There's got to be a polarity. Now, the beauty is that polarity you can flip it around, back and forth. And I think in very conscious relationships, that happens beautifully. My wife's very strong. She grew up.
Okay, well, again, super, super important, right? Good point to end it on, because that polarity, like he says, is being lost because particularly in the West, maybe that's why he moved to Mexico, where the culture is slightly different. It's still somewhat more traditional. but it's certainly in the Anglosphere. You know, we are in this situation whereby masculinity is becoming demonized, and you know, at the same time, the boss babe phenomenon is increasing. Women are getting stronger. Women are getting more and more power, both economically and socially and politically and everything else. And so but at the same time, our biology hasn't really caught up with that. So we get these guys who are acting in a more feminized kind of a way, in a less dominant way, and women are not finding that attractive. And at the same time, men are getting frustrated because they feel that they are not being able to attract the women that they want. And it's this big, just massive mess. And this, again, you know, it's one of the things that we cover in our course, The Edge, because we want to help you to foster that masculine edge to overcome some of this stuff. So if you're interested in that, it's a 10-week course. You can still join until midnight tomorrow. Drop me an email, troy@realtroyfrancis.com. Please do like this video if you haven't done so already. Sucker Free 86. It sounds like what Pearl always says, that men are too feminine nowadays, women are too manly now. Absolutely, indeed. I think it's been really interesting deep dive into Robert Glover and his thoughts on the nice guy phenomenon, and why basically, you know, being a nice guy really just doesn't cut the mustard in today's dating world. But at the same time, it's not about being a monster either. It's about being aware of these dynamics and playing the game in your favor. You know, playing to win rather than playing not to lose. Anyway, with that being said, give me a like, please, for the video. Do subscribe to the channel. Hit the notifications bell. Going to be back tomorrow with some more live action at 2 p.m. EST. I will see you guys again. Oh, wait a minute. SJ's written a comment. Oh, so Mary Sullivan says, much love, Troy. Much love to you too. Thank you for tuning in. SJ says, Owen Cook did a video about player versus provider with live demo, and girls actually responding accordingly. Very uncomfortable, no longer on YouTube. Have you seen your other paradigms? Well, I mean, you know, broadly speaking, I think a lot of the stuff that gets talked about in the space is true. It bears out in reality. That would be the overall answer to that. But look, we'll get into it more in subsequent episodes. So, Sucker Feed says, have a fantastic day, and you too. Thanks everybody for tuning in. I'll see you guys again very soon. Bye bye.